Today, we are going to be telling you the origins of Nintendo Direct. Such an interesting story. This has become this big, like very much of a staple in all of our lives. But how did Nintendo Direct come to be? You,
me,
I'm pointing a finger at you, were actually there at the very beginning, at the conception of Nintendo Direct, working directly with Mr. Iwata himself, and sort of like started, what we know as Nintendo Direct today. And it was very different back then, and what it evolved to today is, of course, something that we all have come to love and get excited about. But yeah, we have this untold story about the origins of Nintendo Direct in just a few minutes for all of you.
Yeah, this is one of the big stories that we've just been sitting on, and since we just had a Nintendo Direct last week,
it's fresh in the mind,
where we had weeks and weeks of anticipation leading up to it, felt like this was a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, we had a lot of these sort of like Forrest Gump moments where we were just around a lot of big things happening at Nintendo in the time that we were there. And this was one, I started working on the second Nintendo Direct, which was when it really started to become a thing.
Yeah.
And yes, it was very different than how it is now. And you might be surprised at some of the things that happened that got us to this point. But yeah, we're gonna be telling that story soon. It's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna be a really good one. That said, as you were saying, we have been on the night watch of Nintendo Direct for many, many weeks. It finally ended last week. We finally did get the legend itself, the February Nintendo Direct. It turned out to be a partner showcase, but it happened. So now we can all breathe, I think, a sigh of relief and just move on with our lives a little bit. But yes, it did happen.
It did happen. Did it change your life? Did it make your life better? I don't know.
Yeah.
We did some predictions, which ended up being pretty accurate, and we do have a reaction to that if you are a little slow to get around to some of the news, which might be worth your while. But yes, now we can take a little break and ponder what might happen next, because now we're kind of into the great unknown.
Yes.
Where the rumor mill's a-buzzing again about,
timing for Switch 2.
If the Switch 2 isn't coming out until next year, then how are they buying a year's time? So I'm very interested to see if we get something between now or June. June is the typical time, but again, E3's no more, so they might have a good reason to change things up. So I don't know.
Yes, it is the great unknown now, and it's hard to predict what Nintendo's move is going to be next. And of course, nothing is official.
No.
There's been no announcement, no confirmation of anything from Nintendo. These are all just rumors and potential leaks. They are being reported on by some reputable people.
I'm telling you though, GDC is just a few weeks away.
Yeah.
That could be the dam bursting as far as leaks. And some people were making a good point. As I was listening to some podcasts myself. This last round of leaks happened just after DICE, which is a big industry insidery event. One that we've never been to, by the way. Before I was like, should we go to that? And I was like, maybe not.
No, maybe
but
it's not.
That is very interesting that there is a correlation between these big industry events where people come together to hobnob.
Yes.
And some loose lips may be happening.
Loose lips sink ships, as they say. Because, if you're getting together with your little buddies, and we've been to many of these events, and it's fun to catch up with all our industry friends. But you get a couple of drinks in you get a couple of margaritas in you.
Couple smart cocktails, and who knows what you're going to say.
That's what I'm saying.
You especially.
Me, I can't be trusted. That's why no one tells me any secrets.
I have to imagine Nintendo's going to be there conducting business, talking to some partners about things. So
the devs, the Tears of the Kingdom devs are going to be there.
It is for developers. It's the Game Developers Conference, in fact.
That's right. Yeah,
so,
in fact.
Yes, you might want to circle that on your calendar. That's in like late March.
Yeah.
Which is this is a year where they really should ensure that this never happens again. The overlap with GDC and PAX East, which we're not going to, by the way. If anybody's curious, we won't be at PAX East. We will be at
GDC, but not PAX East.
Right.
GDC is in our backyard.
You gotta pick and choose.
Yeah.
But there was one year that we basically were working at GDC, packed a bag and caught a flight to PAX one of those nights, and that wasn't the best.
No, that is, and it's
don't recommend
it's like the danger zone of winter illness. So your body is just like fighting you with every fiber. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this.
No.
I'm going to get sick. What are you doing to me? And it doesn't feel good. Last thing I'll say about Nintendo Direct, just because we're going to be leading into this great Nintendo Storytime about it, is that it's been so interesting for us, I think, because we have lived through so many like types of, things that we do for a Direct, from working at Nintendo and planning and doing the inside stuff to for a Direct, for an upcoming Direct, and like being on the other side of looking at what fans are speculating about, and like, talking on the inside about like how do we maintain this element of surprise, which is always a big priority for Nintendo. And now that we're on the other side, it's just cool to flip it and do the other stuff, which is we are now the people that are speculating and getting excited for stuff, and we get to be surprised or not if there are leaks, and we get to be like we did both parts of it, is my point. And I think it's actually kind of cool. Like, how many people can say that they've done both sides of this thing that's like such a big deal now in the industry?
Well, the question of leaks is really interesting now, because I think we talked about this in our Patreon exclusive bonus Q&A last week, but it's kind of a race against the clock now for Nintendo to deal with Puro, who's this really accurate leaker. And yes, you never want to leak, but there's a difference between Puro leaking something about a partner showcase and Puro leaking the Switch 2.
Yeah.
Big difference. And we don't know what Puro's access is. It seems to be, again, very accurate when it happens. So I have to imagine there's a search underway, an investigation, or whatever you want to call it. But will they resolve it in time?
Oh,
somebody make this into a Netflix miniseries. This would be very fascinating to watch.
I would love to watch this. Yes, if someone can like document sort of the investigation. And we've been on the inside when these investigations happen, and they are
starring Kurt Russell as Puro.
Oh, why Kurt
Russell? Starring Bruce Willis as Doug Bowser. Bruce Willis is Doug Bowser.
I'm gonna get you
in the world. I'm gonna get you, Puro.
I can just see him sitting in that chair with like a hairless cat. Yes, please make that documentary. HBO, pick that up, please. Thank you. But yeah, it is really interesting, and I think the birds' days are numbered.
Yes.
But yeah.
In other news, very fun, coming exclusively for our Patreon subscribers this week, is our Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth spoiler cast, which we are recording tomorrow and will be out before the end of the month.
Oh my gosh, this is our first official spoiler cast.
Yes.
This is
a new monthly thing.
A new monthly thing exclusive to our Patreon community. So if you are not part of it, please join us to get this amazing piece of content. We'll talk more about this in the games we're playing section, but some things have happened to me, okay?
Yeah.
In terms of me playing this game. If I look a little sleepy today.
Well, let's give a little, just a little tease for the games we're playing. We're recording the spoiler cast tomorrow. As of now, you've not finished the game. I have.
You have. So I had a little setback.
Well, we'll talk about it later. But
I'm just setting the table.
I'm just setting the table here.
I know. I texted you last night.
I'm throwing you the alley-oop for you to dunk it.
I texted you last night in quite a panic, and you were like, girl, I can't help you. Well, you can cheat by buying this DLC.
That was my advice too. Like they do sell leveling packs with DLC.
And you know how I am. I'm just like, no, I'm great for this. Anyways, we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yes.
But some things have happened, guys.
Yes.
Also this week, there is a Pokemon Direct, because it is Pokemon
Don't call
Day.
it. No, it's not a Nintendo Direct. It's Pokemon Presents.
Pokemon
Presents. Get it straight.
Whatever. It's all the same.
Yes,
guys.
that's happening tomorrow for us as we record this now. We'll be doing a little reaction to that.
Yeah.
We're not going to do a prediction.
Well, let's do predictions in our behind the scenes today.
Okay.
For our Patreon folks.
Okay. I don't know how many predictions I have, but
no, that'll be fun.
I got
some predictions.
Cook up one or two, sure.
I got a few things I like to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, more ways to be wrong. Always good. Oh. Yeah, spread it out. Spread out the wrong.
No, I'm always right. I'm
sure.
kind of wrong.
Sure.
But yes, we'll be doing a reaction to that. See what's going on. That's and again, I think this is probably the last little guideposts we have before we go into the vast darkness of space, and then we won't know like what is happening. So it'll be interesting to see what is in this thing to maybe try to inform some of the other things. You know?
I don't know if it's great to have this thing where you are obligated to make announcements now on a specific day.
I know, you kind of locked yourself in, huh? Yeah.
Right. I mean, they've been able to do well with it over the last couple years, but maybe 1 year, this is not the best day to do it. Or maybe you need a little more time. Or
else you also like end up like planning all of your stuff around that. Like you're kind of forced to plan all your releases and your announcements around that. And even though there might be a better time to share an announcement or release something, you like can't.
Yeah.
Because you're basically locked into this specific day. But whatever, I think people have come to expect it. It has become like a pretty like annual thing.
I need these Pokemon Masters updates.
I need it, and I need the hot what's-his-face to tell me about it.
Oh, the hot COO.
Yes.
That's what we're really tuning in for.
We're really here for his hair and his style.
Okay.
For his looks.
Yeah. All right. I can get behind that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
Cool.
Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into our Nintendo Direct story time. But first, this episode is sponsored by Notion.
Thank you.
Notion combines your notes, docs, and projects into one space that's simple and beautifully designed.
That is the part that I really like, because we do have a lot of notes for the podcast. We also there's two of us, trying to keep everything running, and we have a lot of documents and communication between the two of us just to keep everything organized. And Notion does such a great job of keeping it not only organized, but it just looks nice. It's very aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for you to get to the information and get to what you need, which is great.
You would be shocked at how many documents we generate as just a two-person organization. And yes, Notion does make it so easy because it's an all-in-one solution. It's not like, well, is it in this thing or is it that thing? Is it in that app? Is that? It's all just one thing, and it makes it very simple.
Yeah.
I thought up another great potential use for this, which is like a group vacation. Where you're kind of planning that with maybe like a group of friends or your family or something.
Yeah.
And that can get stressful too. And a lot of times like, well, I've got this, this spreadsheet and this file and people get like, I don't know. Where is it? Now I'm mad at you and I'm feeling bad before we even go on this trip. I thought that could be a great use for something like Notion.
Great idea. I have a vacation coming up this summer with 15 people.
No.
And that is such, I'm going to do this. I'm going to use it right now.
15?
Yeah, it's a huge group.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be an epic trip, but I do need, we've been sending emails back and forth and it's getting a little confusing, and I think Notion
it's time to make the switch.
100% the solution. I can't wait to, that's a great idea. I can't wait to use that.
So it's going to be used by Krysta and her 15-person trip, but it's also used by over half of Fortune 500 companies.
Oh, yeah.
People who need to make the stuff work and to get the job done and not just you fooling around.
You got to make money, you got to stay organized.
Right, exactly.
That's what it is.
And the fully integrated Notion AI assistant helps you work faster, write better, and think bigger, doing tasks that normally take you hours in just seconds. So try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/KitandKrysta. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/KitandKrysta to try out the powerful, easy to use Notion AI assistant today. And when you use our link, you are supporting our show, notion.com/KitandKrysta.
And we'll put the link right over here and also in the description below. Thank you so much, Notion.
All right.
Big story time.
Yes, Nintendo Direct. So let's go all the way back to 2011, over 10 years ago.
That's a long
Can you believe it?
No.
This is when the first Nintendo Direct happened, October 2011. I want to ask you, what was your recollection of the very first Nintendo Direct?
Reggie's shiny chin. That was my recollection.
Right.
I remember it being this, I didn't work directly on it. I was supporting somebody on this. And that person, it was not you actually. It was somebody else on our team. And it just felt so experimental.
Right.
And it felt so, not to be mean about it, but like it felt like kind of janky, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it did not feel high production. It did not feel organized. It did not feel anything like it does now. It was just this like very like almost like startup-y kind of feeling.
It was Reggie on a white background, just reading a teleprompter.
That's right.
And this was the infamous if you don't have a 3DS, what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
Presentation, which became memeable. That's one of those lines where I'm like, how did they get that in there? You're kind of like saying,
it's like insulting.
You're like talking bad.
I do remember there was a discussion about that line.
Oh, really?
And Reggie was in the room when that discussion was happening, and it was with Golem was the agency. They did a lot of script writing in the very beginning when we were experimenting with Nintendo Direct, and that line was in there. It was written by the person that writes all of Reggie's like presentations and knows Reggie really well, knows Reggie's voice really well. You have had to learn Reggie's voice when you worked on this project, but yeah, I remember there was a discussion about that line and that exact same conversation about like, is this too mean? Like, is this?
I was surprised when I saw
it. Is this insulting? And ultimately, the decision was like, no, we need to be like a little shock and awe kind of thing. Like, and Reggie's no stranger to the shock and awe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he had the famous, of course, the taking names line. That's a little bit like hardcore.
Yeah.
Hardcore from Nintendo standards. And so it didn't feel like out of character for him to be sort of say something like that.
Right.
Not in a super mean way, but just kind of in like a tough love kind of way. So that was how they like convinced themselves into it, I think. But I remember there was a discussion about that line.
So that's interesting that you were part of the very small group that was involved in that one.
Yeah.
Because my memory is that it released to very little fanfare.
Right.
And a lot of people, myself included, I did not even know about the first Nintendo Direct until well after it had happened. It was just like, what? This is just some random thing that we put on our YouTube channel, which was new. Yeah. I was like, well, okay, it's like him talking about some things, most of which we... Yeah. Like, there wasn't really a lot of news in it. It was just like a lot of like retelling...
It was
things
very
we already knew.
Very PR kind of.
And he did mention like, we'll be sharing information here, but it was unclear like what exactly is the purpose of this. I don't know.
Yeah, I do remember it was one of those infamous like global PR like after E3 meetings where the idea was floated by Mr. Iwata like of doing something called a Nintendo. I mean, this was his brainchild. Yeah, 100% like his Mr. Iwata's idea. And of course, Reggie and Mr. Iwata had a very close relationship. But I remember in that meeting, it was like almost like a afterthought. It was a very I don't even remember that very well. It was not like I'm going to spend 30 minutes telling you. That's what I'm saying. It was kind of
it was like a one-off thing. So so again,
exactly.
like most of us. I mean, outside of this extremely small group of people that worked on it, like had no background really on this, didn't know if there would be more, didn't really think anything of it. It was like, all right, well, this is going to come and go, or we're just experimenting. We're just trying something out for the YouTube channel or whatever. The enduring legacy of that for us internally was, as you said, Reggie's shiny chin, which became something of an internal meme, where if you mention Nintendo. Yeah, but
don't let that happen again.
His chin was so shiny.
It became like a point of shame on the team that was producing it, which was actually our team at the time. Again, it was very like grassroots-ish. Yeah. And our team was doing like sort of the scripting and the directing of it. Right. And then we obviously had like the production, like the content lab. It wasn't even content lab back then.
It was before that even existed.
Team.
Right.
It's called the AV team back then. They are used to doing like game trailers, but had to shoot. They did shoot some lifestyle sometimes, but it's kind of new to them too. So we didn't. None of us understood like how to produce something like this, and it became like this thing of like, you guys really like that was not very professional. He had a shiny chin, like he really messed us up.
Never heard about it from him though.
No, he didn't care.
I don't think he cared. So it was a lot of like projection of his
the
feelings,
bad job that you did,
of his feelings, which he never expressed. I don't think he even had.
He didn't have those
onto these people.
All. But then you know what I had to do? I had to buy so much anti-shiny.
You took him to Sephora?
No, I took myself to Sephora because I was somehow in charge of like getting like the little like the clear
powders or whatever.
No, it was that like oil absorbing sheet.
Oh,
remember those? And then powders. And I was the makeup artist.
I don't want to get too deep into this, but
it's crazy.
It's unclear to me why it was shiny at all.
He had nice skin.
It's not like Reggie does not have oily skin.
No,
I think it was just a lighting. It was lighting.
Bad lighting.
Like reflecting off
but
his skin.
But also like he had nice skin. If you have like dry, ugly skin, then you won't have that glow. Like, you know what I mean? Like he was a healthy person with like good skin. So that's why I look like that.
So well, now we're spiraling again into the shiny chin gate, which seriously like became like the #1 talking point for several weeks.
And it became
and would continue to be anytime he got on a camera.
And it became a thing where it's like, if you guys let that happen again, you're like fired. If you let anyone's chin that you're producing something with be shiny, you're fired. We've
kind of talked about this before, like where there are certain things in a company that people will just harp on internally, and this was one of them where like people would just tell and retell the same story or make the same point. It's like I have heard this 50 times.
Yeah.
I don't need to sit through this conversation again.
But
the point has been taken. It is understood and absorbed. Yes, we all get it.
Yeah, we have more stories about
But that was a thing that strangely would happen a lot. Of like a certain point would just get drilled into the ground.
To a point where like it really did start to make you feel kind of bad. But it became like one of the legendary like cautionary tales.
I never felt bad. I was just like, stop wasting our time. We get it.
Oh, I felt bad because I was there, and I did not blot his chin. So then I felt bad. Then I felt like I was irresponsible.
Right.
But yeah, the point of it is. We need to get off this topic of the shiny chin.
Please.
But the point of it is that it was very low production. It was very much an afterthought, and it was a thing that Mr. Iwata was like, hey, guess what? We're going to try this thing called Nintendo Direct. And we're like, okay, whatever. Sounds good to us. And no one really thought two bits about it.
Yeah. So that was October 2011.
Yes.
And again, like we didn't really hear anything else about this, in the aftermath. So it was like, all right, this strange thing that we weren't really thinking of, maybe it ran its course or whatever.
Yeah.
It was very much in the whatever category.
It was.
Until January 2012.
Yes.
I got a phone call from my boss and my boss's boss together.
Oh.
And they were at the time in Europe attending this big we call it the global PR meeting, which was like a big planning meeting for the year that Mr. Iwata attended himself. He took these very seriously.
He did, yeah.
And he was there, and he was often driving the meeting. And they would talk about, all sorts of things, big initiatives. They might start to talk about plans for E3 or upcoming games or just bigger initiatives that they need to have a global eye on. And it was a point, there was like a certain level of people who got to go to that, and at that point, I was not at that level. So I never went to those at that point. I could only hear about them. Sometimes I would like make slides for it.
You went to it later on, though.
I went to it later, yes, but not at that point.
Yeah, not in 2012.
Right, so I got a phone call from them, and they were whipped up into a tizzy because they said, Mr. Iwata gave us this big presentation on Nintendo Direct. This is going to be a major new initiative. We want to learn from the last one and really take it in a new direction and make it something bigger. And we have our next installment is planned for February. And it's coming up soon. But we really have a mandate to improve the quality, make it something that's going to stand out with the fans and really cement this as something that we can return to and they're going to want to look forward to. And they were appointing global leads to ensure that there was global coordination and again, really watch over this quality point. And guess what? I was the person chosen for NOA.
And you're the victim. You didn't even volunteer as tribute. You were just the
victim. Honestly, this was a terrible way to share this information because like that was the download. It was like, okay, now we have to go back to the meeting. You go ahead and get on this. Bye.
Bye.
Click.
Yeah. And they were not even in your time zone.
No. So I obviously had I had 20 follow-up questions that I couldn't ask anybody.
Right.
All they had said was to speak with this person whose name Mr. Airy. Mm-hmm. And they was like, he's going to be another like really key person for you. So just talk to him about anything you need to. But I was like, I kind of panicked after getting that phone call because I was like, okay, this thing is in like a month. Mm-hmm. I barely even know what this is. I didn't even barely pay attention to the first Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me I've got to make this into some crazy huge thing
global
in a
announcement.
month.
Yeah.
That was really bad. And again, like the fact that the people who had the information, they were unavailable. I would not talk to them again until they got back.
Which was like at least a
week later.
A week and a half
I could not wait. I had to get going.
Yeah. Did you know, we got to know Mr. Airy pretty well towards the end of our tenure, but did you know
I got to know him really well on this project.
I was going to say, did you know him before this project started?
I had like some little
passerby.
chit-chat. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like this, almost like a stranger, you know, you never worked with him closely
so
before.
he was one of, we call them NCL employees, he was kind of, originated working at NCL and was sent over to NOA.
And he was in Redmond.
On a mission. He was in Redmond.
Yeah.
His title was, I think, like the Vice President of Global Coordination.
Yeah.
Something that it was important, but it was unclear exactly
what he did.
What it was.
Yeah.
So, he was my next phone call to get a download. And what would become the fact was like he and I were kind of the only two permanent members working on this over time. So he and I got very close and created a really great relationship, and we came to rely on each other quite a bit.
Thank goodness he was like capable. Sometimes you get stuck with someone that kind of sucks.
Right.
And then it would have been really bad for you. But at least Mr. Airy, I think, was was a good partner to you.
The information sharing at that point was interesting because the Japan team would send the information directly to him because I don't think the contact at the time spoke English.
Yeah.
So he would get the information from Japan and he would kind of pass it along to me in his own way, and then I would have to go do something with it.
Yeah.
So he was in this like middleman position, which is never a fun job.
Yeah, it's a game of telephone.
To have, but he also had a very important role of like if I had a question for that team, like he would chase it down. And again, he was high up, so he could get the information, but I needed to know what the right questions to ask were, and kind of anticipate like, well, what else do I need based on this? But he would get it. So he was very trustworthy in that sense. It was not like I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is like dead weight. Like
right.
But again, like I barely knew the guy at the time, so it didn't make me feel better. Like, oh, talk to Mr. Airy. I was like, I don't know Mr. Airy. He doesn't know me.
Nice.
Does he know who I am? Yes, he's the nicest guy.
He's like the nicest person ever.
Right, and he's very famous for his facial expressions, like oh.
And he also loves beer and ramen, which you can't go wrong.
He has since moved back to Japan.
He has.
Right.
To drink more beer and eat more ramen.
To do something else. I don't know.
I love Mr. Airy.
So, again, a lot to do, not a lot of time to do it. So I had to get the big download from Mr. Airy. I had to, I knew, again, like I was just watching the first Nintendo Direct over and over. I was like, okay, this is scripted.
Yes.
I need to write some sort of a script. So I need to know pretty specifically what is going to be in this thing.
Yeah. And also, it's a global thing, so it has to be globally coordinated.
Right. I can't just make it up.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's just a lot of like cats to wrangle.
Right. I had to, again, this mandate was improve the quality, so I had to really like analyze the first videos, like how can I make this better?
Don't have a shiny chin.
And then I had to enlist all these other people in NOA to help me with this, because obviously I couldn't do this all myself.
Right.
So this was also a different point in Nintendo Direct where it was kind of left up to every region to do what they wanted with it. Yeah. So, in Japan, it was Mr. Iwata was the key speaker. And oftentimes their Nintendo Directs early on would be very long. Europe would sometimes...
Mr. Shibata did it,
They would have Mr. Shibata,
who's amazing,
who was the head of NOE at the time. He's also moved back to Japan, and he became quite beloved for that.
Yeah, he is really beloved.
He did a really good job.
He was really nice.
He's a very playful guy.
He has a good personality for being on camera. Yeah. Reggie obviously was our person.
Europe would also just sometimes just straight up localize Japan's.
And just subtitle it and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Or
and
voiceover
eventually, Mr. Iwata would record his segments in English and Japanese. We were not at that point yet for this.
Yeah, no, this was like way earlier than that.
It was made very clear, like we're not just localizing Japan's though. Like ours needs to be unique
to NOA,
to our market.
And then we had a key spokesperson in Reggie.
Right.
That we needed to have that script fit with his his voice.
Right.
And
we had Reggie, and frankly, like we had the benefit of a lot of other great spokespeople as well.
That's true. We had Bill. We had Nate. Yeah, we had a lot of people.
Right. So as I started to think of like, okay, this quality question, like this seems really important, and I understood it because I was like, yeah, this is kind of low budget. So I was like, what can we do? So I just like was brainstorming, came with some ideas. Like let's bring in an external production company to help us with the editing because this is on like a crazy tight schedule. We need somebody who's not going to get bogged down with other projects, who's just there to do that, but also can help with other things like video effects or transitions or just other like nice graphics and make it feel a bit more high quality. So I think we found this production company that had experience working on like
events and stuff,
internal corporate videos or things like that.
Oh, have we ever used them for other events?
I don't remember how.
We used to use external editing or production companies for like, events or marketing things.
No, this was a new group. I can't remember how. I think somebody just had a recommendation of like, check this person out or check this group out.
Yeah.
I mean, they ended up being really good. So it was lucky that we got
That's not the case at all
connected
anymore.
to them.
Everything is in-house now. So
Right. I wanted to really, again, not just use that white background, but I wanted to bring people inside NOA and make it like, again, this is the information coming from
inside
us
the
to the viewers. So, let's kind of bring them inside, give them an insidery feel, and also use different speakers more than just Reggie to give it some variety, and also different locations because at that time, the new Redmond headquarters was still relatively new. Not a lot of people seen or even knew about it.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful building.
Really pretty.
So it's like, let's really take advantage of this to, show this off. But at the same time, like, let's keep people really engaged with this video and not let it like just sit in anything. Let's not give people a chance to get bored by this.
Yeah, if you're just standing in front of a white background for like 40 minutes, it can be a little bit of like a drag,
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally, like, use some different formats beyond just like talking to the camera because like that gets tired pretty fast. So like we could do a little bit of that, but we could also do like an interview segment. There was another one that we did, which was like a walk and talk, where somebody's walking and talking, again, just to give it like some sense of motion. That's something I'm always bugging you about when we do a vlog. It's like, they need to have motion.
We need to be walking. Right. I'm like, okay.
So the reason like there was so much concern about and time spent on like retaining the viewer was, this was a different era of online video, 10, 12 years ago. The prevailing wisdom then was videos need to be so short. So a lot of people would come like and people would tell me like, okay, so you're doing this thing called Nintendo Direct. Can it be under a minute? Can it be a minute or less? Can it be less than a minute? And it's like, well, we have a substantial amount of information to share, so that's not really the goal. Like we don't want it to be boring.
Yeah.
But we're going to give these things the time they need to breathe and to get the information across. And some people were really disappointed with this. They're like, nobody's going to watch this.
No one's going to watch past the first minute.
Yeah, nobody watches. It needs to be snackable. That's the key word. Snackable content. Snackable content. Infotainment. Right. All these awful things that have since been proven to be like
completely false. Yeah.
Wrong.
As we sit here and shoot a 2-hour podcast.
Right. And now today, like, there's so much more comfort with long form content.
Yeah, but back in the day, it was.
No, I mean, this was like Facebook was ruling all.
Yes.
And it was like Facebook, like people who were scrolling Facebook only watch a thing for like 3 seconds and then they scroll away. So it was like, well, I'll make this Nintendo Direct 3 seconds long. We'll get the Micro Machines guy to do the VO. It'd be awesome. Yeah. Got that? Right. So that was really like kind of hanging over this was like the feedback from the powers that be. Again, never Reggie though. Reggie always knew better.
He was like a cut above.
Right. It was like, well, we got this research, or somebody told me that nobody's watching a video more than a minute long. So yes, like, but
it's fine.
But again, like we did put all these controls in place to try and counteract that and keep the viewer watching. I mean, now you could have a Nintendo Direct that's like 4 hours long and people
absolutely
be on the edge of their seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, because we've established the format and people know it's going to be worth their while. But the people didn't know that then.
That's right.
People did not know.
Yeah.
So and also around this time, once we started planning and putting together some like ideas for what this would be, Reggie did what he often does was he gave us a goal. He gave us a target. as far as the performance of the video in terms
yeah.
of like the views. And this made me quite nervous because again, like
It's pretty aggressive.
this is kind of a first of its kind. There was kind of no bar to aim for as far as how this could perform. So the number it felt to me like it was like, this is out of nowhere. Hopefully we can do it, but I don't know. Maybe we can, maybe we can't.
The YouTube channel at that time was also pretty new.
Yeah,
it's not
it did not have 10 million subscribers
I was
like
going to
it has
say,
now.
yeah, it does not have 10 million
Right.
subscribers. It was not established that, this type of content going on this channel was going to perform.
Yeah.
Because before it was just like ads and trailers.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing like this.
Yeah.
On the channel, so I think people were we didn't know what to expect, and we didn't know how to
Right.
benchmark it.
This was also when we were using the perhaps now defunct Ustream for live streaming.
That does not work.
Maybe
first of all.
not the most functional live
That
streaming
always
tool.
never worked.
Yes,
There's always a problem.
They had a very
Rocky.
notable failure during an E3 that I think was the nail in the coffin for them. But anyway, so we had this big goal in mind as well that was just adding to this mounting pressure.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that I noted that I had to do was to start recruiting these other teams to help out. And the thing that I learned right away was like nobody cared about this, which was a big problem. Which again, like you might think is hilarious now. Like, oh my God, Nintendo Direct, like drop everything to do this. This is priority number one.
Right.
People were all in that same boat as I was. Like they didn't know what this was.
Nobody internally knew.
Nobody knew what this was.
Yeah.
So when I approached them and I said, hey, we have this new Nintendo Direct. It's on a really tight schedule. I need you to prioritize this and help me with this.
No.
They're like, no. How about
I'm busy.
How about no? Or you need to change the schedule because this is unreasonable. It's like I can't control the schedule.
Reggie,
I promise.
Said.
I promise you that Mr. Iwata is calling the shots on this
You
and
need
giving
like a doctor's note, like a Mr. Iwata doctor's note.
That was something that rarely happened at Nintendo. There was no like mandate from on high that got sent to the entire company of like this is
we're doing this
right. And again, like from those global PR meetings, information would often be slow to trickle out.
Yeah.
So like maybe our team would hear about it, maybe some other teams.
Our team was usually on like the forefront of that, but
right.
you get down to the people, or like wide to the people on the production side.
Right.
It's like, well, they got other stuff to do.
Exactly. Everybody is extremely busy.
Right. The other thing is like, it was kind of like Nintendo Minute in a way where like Nintendo Direct was nobody's job. It was like tacked onto
it was out of nowhere.
It was tacked onto your existing job.
Right.
And so if you do not have that kind of information like you had directly from Mr. Iwata, like you don't care because you're busy with your actual job.
So for me to contact these teams that I was not even a part of and say, I need you to drop whatever you're doing and make this your number one priority,
like,
did not go over well. Like some people were just like, oh, are you out of your mind? I don't know what this is.
And who are you?
I barely know you. Go away. So like some of the people I had to recruit was like, again, this AV team.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they had worked on the first one.
They were okay.
So they had some idea at least of what this was. So I was able to reluctantly get them to buy in. But other things we needed to do.
Treehouse.
Filming in that office, you need to get special permissions to do. I had to contact, again, very people who were very high up who could easily just say no and blow up this entire idea that we had.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we were able to recruit them. We needed to get information from Treehouse for the scripts.
That was the hardest part.
That was important. And then also we needed, at the time, the team that was pulling game footage was also in the Treehouse.
That's hard too.
And they were they are constantly bombarded with requests.
Yeah.
Like that was perhaps the hardest one of like, here's the schedule, here's when we need things, and there's like, oh my gosh, this is.
I mean, they have to play the game
to
a point where they can take the footage.
And like this is a really big ask and not a lot of time, and we have all these other priorities. Like we got millions of dollars of advertising that needs this footage or whatever.
The games coming out does not stop.
Right.
You have to still do that job of like launching a game.
Right.
You can't just pause that to film a Nintendo Direct or produce a Nintendo Direct.
But fortunately, again, Treehouse overall, like the leadership of Treehouse was plugged in enough to know about Nintendo Direct. So I think my initial request kind of fell on deaf ears, but they eventually heard about it through their leadership.
Yeah.
And they came around.
Okay,
and they were like, okay.
You need them.
Okay, I understand now what this is and why this is important so we can get on board.
Yeah.
But it's still ridiculous.
It's a timeline was tough. Like they were like working into the night, pulling gameplay
Listen, we all were. Listen.
Into the night.
We all were, okay?
You're in sleep for a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So that kind of checked that box. I'm like, all right, we got people, we got a team of people, like a really tight team of people who can help out with this. I'm feeling slightly better about that. Then we had to get around to the scripting, which, at that point, we would often get like, again, Mr. Airy would give me like, well, here's the Japan script, and he would do some like really loose translation in English. And it's like, okay, well, there's some things here we can use, and I can punch those up and rewrite those. Again, to the point of each region doing something different, I think for the Japan version of this Nintendo Direct, like I think their Direct ended up being like an hour long. They had a very long segment, I think, on some karaoke game.
Oh, that's right.
So I really had to like pick and choose, like, okay,
we didn't have that game.
What are the segments we are doing versus the stuff that is not relevant to our market, and how do I pick that out? And then it was a lot of like get information from Treehouse to fill it out and make sure that the specific terminology for every game, which I was not an expert on, or these new features, which I maybe never heard of. Like,
you haven't seen the game.
Never seen the game. Yeah. It's like, I just need this, and so I can write it out.
Yeah.
But we went with this approach where there were a lot of different people involved. So we ended up having Reggie, a lot of Bill Trinan, and then we did these 2 interview segments with 2 other people from Treehouse, which were scripted slightly differently. Those were like a little bit more talking pointy, but for the most part, it needed to be like, this is a written script to be read
verbatim,
word for word.
Yeah.
Which was kind of a different type of writing for me, but one that I kind of surprised myself. I was like, I think I might be kind of good at this, actually.
Yeah, I think you were really good at it.
So for Reggie, writing for Reggie in that style was actually kind of easy.
Reggie's...
Because you can just imagine
hear him in your head.
It's hard when you can't imagine the person saying it, because like, I need to write it to match their tone and their flow. But with Reggie, like there was so much material out there. I was like, I can just imagine him. And it's like, oh, this doesn't sound right. This is not a word he would use.
This is not phrasing.
Right.
Yeah.
It was quite easy to just read it and adjust it based on that.
He has such like a unique, and he has his own style that was so consistent throughout all of his presentations, and even the way that he wrote emails to us or talked to us in meetings, he was always the same person, which is really amazing actually, to just be yourself and be awesome all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what made it easy to write for him.
Right. So Reggie had some just direct to camera on the prompter stuff for the beginning and the end, so that was not too hard to write. The Bill Trinan stuff was a bit trickier for me because, again, like I was like, again, with reading off of a prompter is like harder than you might think to get, because it's like you need to get every single word perfectly, or it can kind of just like disrupt everything else. You also
don't want to sound like you're reading off a prompter.
Right. He also had this segment which was strangely more complicated than it felt like it would be, which was the walk and talk, where he was slowly walking down a hall while reading the teleprompter.
That's hard.
Which is, it sounds easy. It's actually much harder than you might think.
It's like, doing this or like chewing gum, and it's like hard.
Right.
Your brain is doing 2 things.
Like, he's great. He was glad to be like more hands-on, and he's like, I'll tweak this to put it in my voice more.
He shook a tree.
Great.
At one point. But he's very on board with stuff.
Yeah, he's down to do stuff.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to do it for this one, but later on, I did write scripts for Mr. Iwata when he started recording the English segments for the Nintendo Directs. And that honestly was also very similar to Reggie, where it's like, I just know the way he talks.
Right.
But again, like you did have to take into account, like, well, he's not a native English speaker, so I don't want to like get him hung up on any of these words.
Yeah, or like too much slang or like phrasing is difficult when you're not an native English speaker.
The thing that was hard about him though was, like, again, he's the president of the company.
Busy.
There's not a lot of time, not a lot of fat into this schedule. So I'd often get the script, the loose translation, and like, okay, we're gonna go record in an hour. Here's the script. You need to turn this. Can you turn this around in an hour?
For Mr. Iwata.
So it was like, oh.
Drop everything.
All right. And sometimes this was like 8 p.m. or like it was like, hey, it's like,
because
hey,
it's Japan
it was like,
time.
hey, we're targeting our
11 a.m.
our 1 p.m. to record the script. And I was like, oh, that's my 9 p.m. Cool. I guess I'm just twiddling my thumbs all night waiting for this thing to come through.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's kind of
your life
a taste of, again, just the around the clock nature of this.
Your life was basically a clock for Nintendo Direct.
Right. But still, you know, one of the things that, you know, is still like a really key component of Nintendo Direct is like getting the ordering of the information right to keep good pacing and like build momentum throughout. So there is kind of an art to that of, it's like, well, if we got 6 announcements, like what is the best order to put them in to build, to keep people hooked in, keep, you know, have something beginning that's exciting and, you know, hopefully have some big thing at the end and to cap it off to make people feel good.
The origins of the one more thing phenomenon.
Well, that's always been around.
You gotta put that in. You gotta put that in the Direct, just like you did at an E3
but
press
that
conference.
is, and when Nintendo does have missteps with that, it's always like, oh, they're usually so good at that because they really do put a lot of emphasis on.
That's why we always, when we do like predictions and reactions now, we always look at the pacing.
Yeah,
because that's such a way for you to fail, even if you have such good announcements or if you have a few good announcements.
Right.
You gotta like, it's like a Tetris game of ordering them correctly.
Right. It was the Direct, I think, from last year where they had all the Square Enix farming games. I was like, this is so uncharacteristic of the pacing not being there for whatever reason.
Drags.
Right. So this again, this ultimately became like a 11 or 12-minute video, so the pacing was not as hard.
I can't believe how short it used to be. It's so
well,
crazy,
again, when people are make it 3 seconds, make it 3 seconds. Like you're really like under the gun to keep it short. So the shoot day comes, or you know, I fly up to Redmond to get ready for the shoot because that's where we're doing it, and we had like half a day to do like a little walkthrough. And this was the first time for our AV team to meet this external agency, and basically our AV team would shoot it, and then we'd give the footage to them to you know, work with and start to edit down. But it was a real like meeting of the minds of these like AV people, like where they were like talking to like, you got this kind of light, I need this kind of light. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Drive, this
right.
blah blah. Now
and I was
like,
like,
a thing or two.
I was like, I'm kind of sensing some friction over this like debate over a certain type of light, but I'm gonna let it work itself out.
This is where the production team goes fix it in post,
right?
And the editing team gives them like the dirtiest look, because they're like, that's gonna take hours for us to color correct this.
Right. So that was like kind of the goal. Was like, let's get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
And in that walkthrough, like a lot of people did start to voice concerns with the schedule because we had one full day to do this, but we had a lot of these different locations.
Right.
And we had a fixed time to shoot with Reggie, again, because he has a busy schedule.
President.
And they were like, you know, I don't know if we can do this in the schedule that you've outlined.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of equipment. Like they had racks and racks of stuff to cart. They had to set up, tear down, cart it to the next place, set it up again, get ready to shoot. So like it truly was an all-day affair.
Not a lot of like buffer built in either for like mistakes. So if you need to if one part of the shoot took longer than expected, you just don't have that buffer, which is a little terrifying.
Right, and again,
honestly.
This was our first time doing it, and we learned after the fact, like some of those shots were, like we did not return to the walk and talk for a reason.
Overcomplicated.
Because it was
not worth the.
It was not worth the return to like, because it was like, well, he's going to walk at this speed, and the guy's going to move the camera at this speed, but he needs to be done with his line before he gets to the end of the corridor. The corridor, because nobody's going to turn around. So, for a lot of reasons, it was just way more complicated than it needed to be. But we had the shoot day. It all went really well. And I was feeling pretty good about it after that. And then I think in like a week after that, we got the first cut of it. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, this is really good.
Yeah. Just felt relief.
The agency that we were using like really added a lot. Mm-hmm. And even then, like if you watch the video, like they added some really nice transitions and graphics. And the way that they filmed all the segments had just a lot of like vibrancy. It was not just a static shot of someone talking into a camera. Like it really did have a lot of good momentum to it. So I came away feeling really happy with it, and it was not a challenging. Sometimes you get these things in a lot of work. It's like, oh my gosh.
The first cut was already pretty good.
We need to rebuild this. We need to, start from scratch. It was like, no, it's like we're working with a really solid thing. So it was not that hard.
That's good.
So we knew we had something that was really special.
You have no time to reshoot it, so
right,
you had no option.
Right. So the thing finally came out, it got streamed, it came out on the YouTube, and it got great results.
How many views does it have now?
I don't know.
Okay. Definitely over couple million, right?
I don't know. Some of those older ones, like they never, like people don't really go back.
You gotta check
to watch those.
We'll put it in
but as we do, we sent out this big report, kind of outlining the results, and I remember very clearly, I got this email back from Reggie where he had replied all to everybody,
and those reports go on to like 300 people.
A ton of people got those reports.
All the bosses, all the execs.
Right, and he was just like. I'd never seen an email from him to this point. It was just like, this is an incredible result. Like, we smashed through the projection. We've established this format as something we can rely on in the future. And he specifically called me out. He's like, this is largely due to Kit's good work.
Oh boy!
I was like, oh my god, I've never gotten I have that email.
He should give you more money.
I printed that. I don't. I'm not the person who saves a lot. Like, oh, that was a nice email. I'm going to save that. I printed that one out. I still have that. I was looking at that email this morning for reference.
Yeah.
So that was a really
it's good to have
nice
that kind
thing,
of recognition,
especially after a project like that almost ended you. So that one came away as a big win, but it ended up being this double-edged sword for me because on one hand, this was a good personal, professional win for me to oh yes, Kit's really going places with this Nintendo Direct, and he really pulled this together out of nothing and brought all these people together. That's good stuff, but it was really, I kept that role for I think 2.5 more years. And those were not the most pleasant 2.5 years that I had working there because, again, that schedule was crazy. And there were no concessions made for the other work that I had to do.
That's right.
So
that happens a lot, I think.
Right.
At Nintendo.
So there were a lot of times I would just tell, I was like, I'm not able to work on this other game that we're supposed to be launching for the next month.
Yeah.
And feel free to adjust my workload or bring somebody else in. I'm not going to be able to do it. Yeah. Sorry. And, somehow we had great, people doing support work, often like you.
Yeah,
who would just step in and do it on my behalf because I was not available. But it got to the point where I would dread getting the email from Mr. Area of well, we got another one coming.
The next one is coming. No!
I really just hoped. I was like, this will be the last one. We won't have to do this again. My life can be normal again.
No.
But no.
Never.
No, never.
Never again.
And it was...
you got rid of the project, and then your life was kind of normal again.
I don't know why it took 2.5 years, but eventually they did build a more formalized team.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And processes, and I was able to... I didn't get completely off it, but I was in more of a advisory role
consultancy.
Where it was not again, I was not getting
9 o'clock writing a script.
But unfortunately, other people were still getting crazy emails at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I really when you watch these Nintendo Directs, truly express some positive feelings for the team that's working on it because it is a very very hard job.
Vibes. The thing that was really fascinating to me, that always fascinated me about this whole thing, is that it began as an afterthought, turned on its head almost, overnight into the biggest priority ever that no one cared about. Uh-huh. And then the most fascinating part is it took 2 years, more than 2 years, I think almost 3 years. After you left, the next person that came on had to really do a lot more work in this area, but to build the actual process.
Yeah.
And get people dedicated to doing this. Now they do have that.
Right.
They do have a dedicated team that does this. It's a very constant group of people, so they just know what to do now. But back in those early days, nobody knew what to do, and there was no process and no formula for it.
Well, that's the thing that happens so often is like if something's going okay, nobody's asking those questions.
Right.
Of like, is this sustainable? Like, do you have a process? Like, do you have the right people involved? Like nobody cares about asking those questions when it's going okay.
It's
like
just
keep it up,
out.
keep it up, keep up the good work.
But then you're like dying slowly.
Right. And when you give the feedback, it's like, well, it seems to be going fine, so let's not rock the boat.
Like, but I'm dying. I haven't slept in weeks.
That'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I've been up every night writing a script for like a month. But then and even now with the process and with that they have a huge team doing this now, like a huge team. But compared to what it was back then and what it is now, and now it's so different too because they just localize really a Japanese direct, so it's a little bit different than having to manage a shoot,
create a completely unique thing.
Everything's in-house now.
That's true.
So it's so fascinating that one of the most important, outputs that Nintendo has in terms of how to generate, excitement for announcements and for and sharing like important information about what is happening at this company, like started out as an afterthought and and took so long for it to be supported, appropriately. Yeah. It's amazing the whole thing didn't fall apart like in the beginning where there's like, no, we can't do this because people are dying and quitting, so we can't do this. But no.
Nobody quit. Nobody did die. Nobody did quit is the thing.
They just worked 18 hours a day until they were like numb. But they took it.
Right.
This is the power of Nintendo, the power over their employees, because you just when you are in that role too. I know you were like, I gotta do this for Nintendo. I gotta do this for Reggie and Mr. Iwata. I can't disappoint them. I can't. This is important. Like I would just not sleep. This is what we did, and it was like totally fine. Like we were okay with doing that.
Well, I did start to campaign,
and then you were like,
and maybe in the second half of those 2.5 years, really campaigned to like get somebody else to do it because again, like I had this was not my job. I had another full job that I was at times doing a bad job of, or not at all, because of this.
Right.
So it's like, tell me what you want my job to be, please.
And I don't think you wanted your job to be like
I really didn't
on a Nintendo
No,
Direct
I didn't.
24 hours a day.
No, I didn't.
But yeah, there's no team. And it was never somebody's job. It was always an extra thing that someone had to do on top of their job.
Right.
So it was just, even now, the person that leads Nintendo Direct now, she's amazing, by the way. That's not her actual job.
Right.
She has to do this on top of her actual job. Yeah. So she's a very busy lady. But yeah, it's really interesting. But now there's much better, I think, support and process in place.
And I didn't realize this, but on Wikipedia, there's a very comprehensive summary of all the Nintendo Directs that have ever run, and a lot of those in that period of time, like I was like, oh, I barely remember this, or now I'm only remembering it because I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
So every one of these has its own story, and who knows, maybe we can tell more of these stories.
Yeah,
but that was definitely the most memorable of the first one that I worked on.
Well, that was
in the beginning of the whole thing.
Yeah, that was the origin story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're alive. You.
Shout out to Mr. Airy.
Shout out to Mr. Airy. Oh my gosh,
he's a real one.
You, Mr. Airy. I hope that you're enjoying delicious ramen and beer in Japan. You wrote me. You texted me this weekend. You were like, "I'm prepping for this Nintendo Direct story episode," and it just reminded me how awful it was. Yeah. He's like, "I'm so glad that part of my life is over." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't say." Yeah. Oh boy. Well, anyways, there you go.
There it is.
That's the story.
Enjoy.
We have more Nintendo Direct stories, so we'll definitely keep sharing that here on this podcast.
All right, let's change gears into our Never a Minute segment. And the big game coming out this week is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yes, exciting stuff.
Which we're both very excited to play.
Yes.
And we thought, well, let's do something around Final Fantasy. So we're doing today our top 3 and bottom 3 Final Fantasy games. which maybe is going to be controversial. I don't know.
It might be controversial. Mine are definitely controversial.
I think one important thing to say at the front is we have not played every single Final Fantasy game.
True.
So
I'm like very.
This is limited to the ones we have played.
Yeah, I'm very like hot and cold with Final Fantasy games actually. So
I wrote, as I was coming up with this list, I made a note of like, this is the one that I really should play, that I'm a little bit ashamed that I have not played. Do you have one like that?
No.
No.
Maybe there's one that I just.
You have no shame.
Not on my radar though, and I just don't know. There are. I will say that in my bottom are ones that I have not played a lot. So if
maybe you just didn't like it.
Well, either I didn't like it or I didn't give it a fair chance. So there's two sides of that. Like,
so your list is bunk. Got it.
What if like I didn't play enough for me to actually like it? I don't know. I just for some reason it didn't grab me, so that's why it's on my bottom.
Okay.
But anyways. We should talk about it.
Well, so I just want to say the one game that I have regrets that I have not played and I actually really get to is 10.
Okay.
10, yes.
I've played 10.
And you played 10.
But it's in the middle for me.
You didn't finish it?
Oh, no, I did finish
because
10.
we did also ask the Patreon folks for their...
10 is good.
For their input. A lot of people put 10 at the top of their list.
But it's not on top of my list. It's my thing. It's like
I should really
It's in the middle part of
the... I know they have I don't know if it's a remake, but a version of that's on the Switch that I should just play that.
They do.
Okay, the list. Are we going to start with the tops or bottoms?
Let's go bottoms. And then finish on a high note.
I don't really have mine in any sort... Don't get my list. What are you doing?
Sorry.
I don't really have it in any sort of number.
I don't either. I just have bottom 3, top 3.
All right, okay, so in no particular order, the bottom.
Okay.
Why don't you just give your entire bottom 3?
Okay,
and I'll do this.
First one is Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 2, and Final Fantasy 5. Those are my bottom 3.
You played those?
2 I played but didn't really like.
Now you mean the proper like actual number 2, not Final Fantasy 4, which was known as Final Fantasy 2.
The proper 2.
When did you play this?
I played those kind of a long time ago.
Because those were re-released in the Pixel remaster, but I don't think you played that.
I didn't play during the Pixel remaster. I played it earlier than that. 2.
Well, 5 is one that a lot of people like, so that's interesting.
5 just didn't hit because 4 was so good. And then 5 was like a letdown for me.
Okay.
Because I was like, eh. But it was like, it's like the forgotten Final Fantasy, I think. Because that one didn't come to the US for a while, I think.
No, not really.
Yeah, that one was like the ugly stepchild Final Fantasy.
Okay.
2, I played, but that leveling system is terrible.
1 and 2 are very hard.
The leveling system is it just like
Wait,
it's
what do you mean the leveling
unplayable.
system?
Like you can't level up unless you have them like specifically in your party, and so it's just a grind.
Yeah.
It's a complete grind, and then it's like impossible for you to move on.
Those first games are very hard.
So I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I don't even think I ever played 1 though, ever. Yeah, so I don't know. I can't remember.
We played a little bit of 1 on our stream when we streamed.
Yeah,
Pixel
but I don't think
Remaster.
I personally
But even then,
played it.
it's just hard.
It's too hard.
That's my memory of that.
It's too hard.
But I don't have that in my bottom 3. I also have Final Fantasy 13.
Okay, 13 is bad.
I
right?
have 8, which is controversial,
8.
which is a PlayStation 1. And my last one, maybe just because it was on my mind, I put Final Fantasy 16 in my bottom 3. I've really flipped on this game since we played it. I don't care for that game. So let's talk about issues.
That's so sad.
So 13
is too linear.
13 is known for being extremely linear.
Yeah.
A little basic.
Very basic. The story is nonsense too. Absolute nonsense.
My memory of that game also is this extremely long build-up that Square Enix did over years of like having, this massive segment at like a Sony press conference. And it was like, it's Final Fantasy 13 Fabuloso Crystallis Novoloso. Like they had this
the really gobbledygook name.
And they had this crazy plan of like, well, we're going to do Final Fantasy 13, then there's going to be Final Fantasy 13 Versus and all these crazy spin-offs, which was so ambitious.
Is slowly coming back to me.
And then what they ultimately released was just so like straightforward. It was like, that's what took so long. So I think a lot of it for me was like
the hype
the
was
crazy
too high.
build-up that they totally could not pay off.
The music was kind of good though.
The presentation, the music, those are always good for Final Fantasy.
It was always good,
right?
Yeah.
But it was just not. It was just not the most fun game.
I just remember it was like the most nonsense story
Well,
and it was like the most boring linear.
You're occasionally going to get that in a Final Fantasy too.
That's true. Yeah. But this is like it was like what? I wonder what is this.
So you talked about 2 and 5.
Yeah.
8. I know some people really like this.
I played 8.
I played this. Unlike 7. So 7 I played a couple years after it had come out.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it just didn't click with me. I didn't dislike it, but I was just like, I think I just moved on to other things.
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah, people seem to love this game. I'll come back to it, and I never did.
Oh, interesting.
8, though, I really had a hard time. I was like, I don't like this, and I put it down because I didn't like it. And I think at that point, I started to really feel like, yes, PlayStation can give you these really nice cutscenes, but these load times getting into these fights are a drag. And I liked the kind of like romance. What was it? Squall and Renoa, I think is the other character's name. Like there was kind of a cool romance there, but like I remember it had kind of a convoluted magic system. So I was like, I just don't like this one.
Okay.
And I
definitely didn't play this game. None of what you're saying sounds like I can't remember.
He had the Gunblade, which was a sword and a gun.
No.
I think I played maybe like 15 or so hours, and I was just like, I just don't like this.
Literally not.
And I put it down. And then 16, again, surprising.
I'm so surprised that it's not like just in the middle. It's definitely in the middle for me. Not a bottom, not a top.
I'm just a little baffled at what the direction they chose for this game of making it like basically Devil May Cry. Like,
oh, but the story was good.
The RPG elements,
the
like,
characters
are so bare bones. I really like in Final Fantasy when you have a party, like having a group. And with this, it was like you and Torgal.
I love Torgal.
I like Torgal, but like I wanted.
I mean, you still can have Jill and
occasionally
others.
When the story says it's okay. But they're just kind of doing their own thing a lot of the time.
Some of the battles were the battling was kind of like shaky.
Yeah, people loved, the battle system was good, but the battles dragged on. Like even against basic enemies, it was like this is a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
I've hit this guy with this sword 1,000 times.
Torgal has bitten him like
goblin
a million times.
It's still standing up. And then the boss fights, I felt like were more style than substance.
Yeah, I would agree
where
with that.
Like there was some flashy cutscene, but
or
again,
flashy like QTE.
Again, I was just mashing the button over and over until the next QTE.
Yeah.
And the story lost steam, I felt.
Everyone says that, but I don't feel that
where
way.
I lost the will to continue with it because it felt a little too padded in spaces.
The story was quite good, and I know it started out really strong with like kind of like that Game of Thrones vibe that I think we all really liked. In the middle, it does have this a little bit of a lull,
right?
But then there were some significant, like, surprising story moments that take place. Overall, I think people were harsh on the story, but I didn't really feel that way. So, but. A lot of people were like saying that about the story.
A+ work recording somebody running around in leather pants for Clive. That was some excellent sound design.
Some real hotties.
Excellent sound design there. But this game left me with kind of a bad taste in my mouth.
Oh, I'm
like
so surprised.
It's one of those games where like the further I get from it, I'm like, I don't think I really enjoyed that.
Oh, sometimes that does happen though.
Yeah.
When you think about it again. Like this is what happened with Tears of the Kingdom for me. The further I got from it, I'm like, I didn't like that.
So I'm very curious about where they go next with like a Final Fantasy 17, which is I'm sure years and years and years away.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to make these games more action oriented, but I think they went a little too far with this one, whereas like there was sort of kind of a core soul of the series didn't really translate.
Okay. I don't know if I agree.
Sorry.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Fine.
But
you don't have to.
Entitled to your
You don't have to, and I don't care.
Wrong opinion. That's fine. Whatever.
Top threes, though.
Yes, top threes.
What you
I do
got?
have a number one, and it's Final Fantasy VI. That is definitely
not 7.
Not 7.
I thought you loved 7.
I do love 7, but Final Fantasy 6 is like the golden.
Okay.
That is like the best RPG ever made in the world ever. Nothing can top that game.
Right.
It is the best story of all time. The most memorable characters
Wow.
ever. The coolest villain. Kefka is like the coolest villain.
my gosh.
The battle system
Okay.
is flawless. It is like literally the best game, best RPG ever made. The next one is Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
Final Fantasy VII, again, it's very, I talk about this a lot, but it's wrapped in with a lot of nostalgia for me.
Yes.
And I know you didn't have the same, those same kinds of memories, but also it really was a game that showed me in my little like innocent mind that video games could be so much more than what I ever imagined they could be. Like, it was one of those moments where I was like, this is also a video game? Like, this kind of like cinematic, narrative-driven like experience can also be considered a video game. You know, like when I was growing up playing video games, it was like Mario games.
How can you say that, but you don't like Metal Gear? That we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
I never really played it. I was just never like that. The whole concept of it never like.
Right.
No, it's not romantic. There's no like.
I remember one other thing about 7 that like it took me a while to like get over was like, wait.
You don't like the future.
I thought Final Fantasy was like a fantasy.
I know.
Thing
I get
with like
that.
swords and airships.
Well, it's called Final Fantasy.
And then they did this whole like complete, you know, setting shift to something that was more like futuristic and modern. I was like, it really took me like a long time to come to grips with that.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I remember being really shocked too, but I definitely got on board because the story was so interesting, like so like captivating. And of course now, you know, we both played the remake years ago. We're gonna play Rebirth.
Yes.
From what everyone's been saying, Rebirth sounds incredible. So the fact that these games are so different than the original Final Fantasy VII, but the core of the game like stands up, and you can do this like cool thing by like, you know, modernizing it in this way, and it still feels like super relevant and amazing. Like, that just speaks so much about what a great game it was then.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Did you see that New York Times article that came out?
Don't talk about that. Don't talk about that.
Why not?
It's this big spoiler.
I was just going to tell you say the same thing.
Don't talk about that. Don't do it.
Anyways.
Where do you fall on? You don't say what the spoiler is, but where do you fall on? Should people be able to talk about that openly or not?
Guys, it's been 20 years. I think we can talk about it. This is ridiculous. I'm going to spoil. You know what I'm going to spoil for you? The ending of Great Expectations. Guess what? That lady with the wedding dress, she gets burned to death.
Well,
okay?
nobody cares about that.
Yeah, like, who cares? This is ridiculous. This spoiler culture thing. I'm so glad we have a spoiler cast.
Read it in 100 classic books on your Nintendo DS family of systems.
What is the deal with everyone? The comment. I went deep into those.
What
comments.
about the people who said like they were not born when this game came out, so I never had a fair shot?
Too bad. Born in the wrong era.
Just like you.
Just like me, I didn't ever touch it as an NES controller. Born in the wrong era.
You're a Y2K baby.
I'm a little baby. But anyways, yeah, I'm so.
So what's the rest of your list now?
Oh, the
you have 6, 7, and what?
4.
Oh, 4.
Of course.
Okay, so 4. I have 4 as my top,
of
6,
course.
but then also 7 remake.
Okay, yeah.
So that's
good.
So that's
you're back
interesting.
on my good side now. You've redeemed yourself with your disparaging comments about 16.
Yeah, I mean 6. I can in my mind agree that 6 is probably the better game than 4. But again, 4 was the first time I really got exposed to RPGs and came to love RPGs.
This is your nostalgia.
And there is something really incredible about like the pacing of that game, where like every 30 minutes to an hour, like you're getting some sort of a reveal or a surprise or some new party member or setting change. Where it's like, yeah, let's keep going versus
so important.
Versus some of these other games that can feel like, oh well, now I've got to grind for an hour, or this same story beat is continuing onward when I'm ready to move on. It's definitely a shorter, tighter Final Fantasy, which is great. But some great characters, great story.
Oh yeah.
As well.
Your favorite, Rydia. Your favorite.
My favorite.
Your favorite Rydia.
And among others. So 7 remake. Yeah, I mean, I was just, again, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of original 7 to go on, so I was just really surprised. And I'm just surprised in this project overall, where it's like you've taken one game and now you're making it into multiple games, but you're expanding and retelling the story.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm just now coming to understand what their vision is for this whole project.
Right.
And it's really impressive.
Yeah.
Where people are saying like, oh, Rebirth is like the biggest game I've played in a long time, and it's got this crazy open world. And that's a huge step up from the original remake. And it's also fascinating where 7 Remake had this huge run-up, kind of like 13, like we were talking about, where it's like, oh, this game's vaporware, this game's never going to come out. And then it did, and now they made the next one in a matter of years. So I'm, I was vaguely saying I might not play Rebirth.
You did say that.
Well, I need to really get caught up on the story because I got very confused with the ending moments of the story of Remake.
Well, because it ends halfway through the game.
I need to watch some YouTube videos this week before I start playing the game.
Yeah.
Because that's
okay because it was supposed it's like the season finale, not the series finale.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so you need to you're not like the story does not end at the end of Remake.
I just felt like it was getting a little bit off the rails and into some weird places.
Well,
but now that I'm seeing all the stuff from this game of like, open worlds, I like those. Got this great scene of all these characters on the beach hanging out, doing other things, etc.
Tifa,
etc.
I feel like this year the hot video game characters are so stacked this year. What are we gonna do when we do Game of the Year stuff? It's gonna be like really hard.
I don't know. So I'm feeling better that it's like staying out of nonsense land and being a bit more grounded.
Okay. Do you think we're not gonna do spoilers, but do you think the thing that's gonna happen is gonna happen?
Probably.
Or do you think they're going to change it?
But again, I don't know enough about I know the thing, but I don't necessarily know all the circumstances around it. So
okay, never mind. We'll talk to you.
But I mean, they do seem to be they seem to have no sacred cows in terms of
I know
we will change literally anything and everything about this.
That's what I'm
which is exciting.
It's very exciting, but also kind of concerning.
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
like, what's going to happen? I mean, they proved that the first time around.
Right.
They did the unthinkable in a video game.
Now, have you there's
a thing.
Like they were planning for 13, there have been a lot of these spin-off games around 7. Have you played a lot? Like Crisis Core is one that I was like, should I play that?
Crisis Core. I heard it's good though.
Yeah, I've heard it's kind of good, and now that's on Switch and other modern consoles. Maybe you should play that.
I don't have time. I gotta play Like a Dragon still.
You're never gonna finish it.
I'm gonna finish it. If it takes me all night, I will finish it. But yes, the problem is that I just don't have time. But I would love to. Maybe after.
I'm very curious about Rebirth. That. And then there's just other games also that are around it where it's like, yeah, they probably do have. And the movie, which by all accounts, I haven't seen, by all accounts is not great. But,
but it's like
if you're super into these characters in this world, like that could be a fun thing to just take in.
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that's our tops and bottoms. And then we did poll our lovely community too.
Yes, we got some good responses, which again, like really rallied around a couple of the same games. Cyber says, 6 for me when I still knew it as Final Fantasy 3. 4 was my first, and I have a fondness for it, but 6 holds my heart. I first played it with my sister, and we have a lot of fond memories of it and some of our shenanigans. I've played it several times since between SNES, GBA, and once so far with the Pixel Remaster. It's also dear for some friendship-related reasons, too. It has a lot of good and cool moments. The opera and good characters, and the music, one of my favorite OSTs of the series, too.
Well,
the opera, that was a jaw-dropping thing
moment.
At that time.
Yeah.
For them to do that in a game was...
Completely...
Wow.
A wow. Yeah.
Blue Lightning says... I think the phrase, you never forget your first, applies to me here since Final Fantasy X has to be my all-time favorite. Coming straight off the Kingdom Hearts games, this was the one recommended to me, and oh man, what an impact. The design of the locations was very distinct and colorful, the VA being cheesy early 2000s era, the music absolutely being memorable, and I really took a liking to its battle system. Auron will always be one of my top favorite characters.
Nice.
I want to add, people listening to this, leave a comment. Does this game still hold up today?
Yeah.
Because again, like I really like could I squeeze this game in somewhere this year?
Dabble.
Or at least check it out.
Check it out.
Is this game still as good as it was back when it came out?
I bet it could still hold up.
John Frisha says, Final Fantasy 6 and 4 will always be my favorites. 6 is just a masterpiece from its phenomenal soundtrack to its thrilling, memorable set pieces, and its huge ensemble cast receives better character development than the cast of many modern RPGs. Meanwhile, 4 is what I like to describe as the first modern RPG. It established a lot of the narrative conventions of the genre still seen today, and it truly feels primordial to the RPG genre, just like how Street Fighter II feels for fighting games.
Agreed.
That's a really
good point.
Comparison there.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, Mr. Andy Pong says, I absolutely adore Final Fantasy 15.
Oh.
It might have some pacing issues and confusing narrative, but at the heart of it, it's a great game about a brotherhood between 4 friends on a road trip. The way they interact and grow closer together is what made me fall in love with the game. I just love driving around, camping, cooking, and exploring with the guys, and then watching them bond and grow with each other. It's one of the few games I've played that felt like an actual journey by the end of it. It's also the only game that I, as a grown man, cried my eyes out at the ending. Even hearing Florence Welch's Stand By Me still makes me teary-eyed.
Oh my.
But most importantly, shirtless Gladio, that reason alone should put this game at the top of Krysta's list.
I've not played this game, but now
I didn't play it either.
In. I'm so in.
This was another one I was like, I need to get over this probably of the, Final Fantasy being this very flexible thing.
Yeah.
But I was like, these dudes in a car, like in a convertible.
Yeah, it's not
This is Final Fantasy?
It's not medieval.
Or even like just the, I was like, how is this an epic adventure? I guess it can be some road trip, but I don't know. Maybe I had the wrong impression about it.
Because your first was like 4 and 6 and like all that. So you just grew up, I think, with that in your head. But yeah, it is cool that, again, they don't like hold, they don't have anything precious about it. They just do whatever they want. Whatever makes a good story, makes for good character development. Like you gotta give them props for that, you know?
Yeah.
So.
True.
Yes. Wow.
All right, let's do some news here. And the big news of the week that was not Nintendo Direct. We're not going to talk about that. We've covered.
We've exhausted.
Well, we got one thing actually that we are going to talk about.
And that.
But the Elden Ring DLC had a big trailer and a big dump of information.
Yay!
So it is coming June 21st.
Did you breathe the longest sigh of relief that it wasn't coming like next week?
Well, there had been rumors that it was coming out in February, and I got really nervous.
Right.
Because I can't be asked to choose between that or this Final Fantasy or be asked to like double up.
No,
between
this is
these
not
two
a double up
games.
situation.
I'm not really down with that. So I am extremely happy with this. I did look at the list of games that have confirmed June releases. There's not really much of anything.
Everybody should just not release anything.
There's that
Move out of the way.
There's that new Monkey Ball game, which is coming out like a week later.
That's different.
Which is like, that's fine. That's not...
That's like, we play that, multiplayer with our community. Like, that will be fine.
Fine. But hopefully, everybody else is smart enough to just stay
out the way
for basically that a month. Basically through, late July.
Everyone.
Just do not release a game
Do
there.
not touch.
Because... this sounds bigger than I even expected it to be. So Miyazaki from FromSoft did a big interview with IGN where he said it is probably comparable, if not larger, than the area of Limgrave, which was the big kind of starting area for Elden Ring, which was really, really large.
It was huge, yeah.
So that's surprising.
Yeah, this is the Land of Shadow, the Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Shadow of the Erd Tree is what it's called,
expansion.
yes.
Yeah.
And this is going to cost $40.
It's pretty expensive.
So it is, but if you were getting, a significant chunk of this game that swept Game of the Year, I'm glad to pay for it.
I'm glad to pay for it too.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems worth it.
If this makes Elden Ring like Elden Ring 1.5, I'm down.
Like, would you rather play? You feel like it does have enough content for it to justify the price, given what we saw. Right, exactly.
They are selling a very fancy collector's edition.
Oh yeah,
with like a
so
statue
cool.
and I don't know what little book and some other stuff there. But they also have this other edition that is $80, which has the base game and the DLC. I don't know. That's a pretty good deal.
$80 for the base game and the DLC?
Right. So that means
really
you're basically getting the base game for $40. I don't know if they've done a price drop on this yet, but that seems...
That's a good deal. So yeah, if you haven't played
good.
it yet, you should just get that, because then you can do both for $80. It's not bad.
I watched the trailer, and I honestly didn't take... I was like, yeah, it's a new setting, it's some new...
bosses.
Creepy crawly bosses that look zany. I don't really need to know much else.
Do we know how it works?
What do you mean?
Like, I have my character from the base game. I just port it over, right?
Yeah, I think it just opens up a new area of the map. And that was some I saw some people asking about this. Like, so if I have like a maxed out character...
That's me.
I don't think you're maxed out.
I mean,
you beat the game, but like
I wouldn't want to. My point is that I wouldn't want to remake a character. I really like my.
No,
character
you don't need to do that. I think
a lot.
Is it going to be too easy, or like how are they scaling this? And apparently they were a little cagey about that, but I think it'll be fine.
It's not going to be too easy. Are you kidding me? Like,
really
hard.
I need at least like a week to play this game to lead up to this to relearn it because where I left off was at the final boss and I learned that I was underleveled fairly significantly for the final boss, which is why I couldn't get over it. And I had just hit a point where I was like, I really am good with this game.
Yeah.
I will revisit this at some point, so this is my perfect chance to revisit it.
Oh, that's great. So
hopefully nothing else comes out in that month because I would love to dedicate at least a month to this to really explore this new DLC. Explore the parts of the map that I haven't explored because there's a lot.
There's a lot that I haven't even explored.
Beat the final boss to truly wrap up the game.
Yeah, I can't wait for this. I really there's something so special about the time that we both spent playing the original game, the time that we shared with pretty much everybody else that was playing this game. It's felt like literally everybody was playing this game. Like the amount of time I dedicated to watching videos and researching about my character and like doing all sorts of things. It was so special now that I think about it, now that I have had time away from it. Like that's something that you just don't get very often with games.
It's true.
And I really hope that this recaptures that kind of magic again. Like I can't wait to be like back down the rabbit hole with this, like trying to figure out a way to cheese a boss or like, all that stuff.
More fire giants in the DLC?
How to cheese, blah, blah, boss. Can I poison you for 45 minutes while I like make dinner? Because that's what I did for one of the bosses and that was really fun. Going on those quests to like get the armor pieces I needed to beat the final boss because I was like, I researched so deeply, like this is what I needed. I needed these spells and this is how to do it. Oh my God, I just loved it. It was like such a special thing. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this.
Mark your calendar.
Mark your calendars. Let's go, baby.
All right. We also got, in addition to the Xbox, Microsoft games that were in the Nintendo Direct, we got some more information about what's coming to other platforms.
Oh, yes.
So Pentiment is out now, also on PlayStation 4 and 5. Hi-Fi Rush was not in the Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
That is coming to PlayStation 5 on March 19th. No mention of Switch. Interesting. Ooh. Grounded is also coming the same day, April 16th, to PS4, PS5, and Switch with crossplay.
That's cool.
On all the platforms. That's nice. And then Sea of Thieves is coming to PlayStation 5 April 30th. And again, crossplay built in Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Cool. So what do you make of these two games that are not announced for Switch?
Yeah, I'm really surprised about Hi-Fi Rush because I really thought that was going to be a shadow drop on Switch during the Direct. And of the 4 games, I thought that one would be the one that's most suited for the Switch audience. I'm really surprised by that. Sea of Thieves, maybe they just can't run it on that hardware.
That's what I'm wondering about these now. Is like, do they need to wait for some next hardware to get this to work right? Hi-Fi Rush, I felt like there were some, this got rated in Korea. I felt like there were some breadcrumbs about that for the Switch version, which
strange.
Maybe those were not accurate, but that was leading me to feel confident that it would be coming out for this Switch. Yeah. I mean, we saw Grounded.
It looked kind of shaky, though.
It didn't look great, but they got it running. Like, you wonder, can they not do that for Sea of Thieves?
Maybe they can.
But you would think, what is the good reason to not put it out day and date to again build this player base for this live service
audience.
For this live service game? Yeah, why would you not?
It's got to be a power thing.
So that I tend to lean towards that as well. So those may be early announcements.
That's unfortunate. That's really
unfortunate. For who?
I don't know, just for the for Sea of Thieves, really, because it's like to your point, when you're doing this kind of live service game, you just want it to have
players.
As many players as possible, so when people log on, there's someone to play with,
Well, it'll still be around in a year.
Oh, well.
It'll still be there, yeah. Speaking of the Nintendo Direct, once the dust settled, one of the things that people realized was that in the Japan Nintendo Direct, they got Mother 3 on NSO GBA, and obviously we did not.
No, we did not.
No, we did not.
Wow.
And I guess they were releasing like a whole new line of like Mother 3 merch in Japan. They went kind of big with it, which is interesting.
Ouch.
Which, of course, brought up the whole, question of like, well, why can't this come out here? Or why have we not gotten it?
Localization.
And, when we were at Nintendo, like, Mother 3 was kind of like a dirty word. It was kind of like a third rail topic where it's like, it was like this unspoken rule of like, don't mention Don't bring it up.
Yeah.
So
don't mention
I don't know who exactly knows the reasons. I think different people have different theories.
Yeah, there's theories around.
Obviously, there is some reason.
Theories around like licensing, legal things. Like there's theories.
Right, but I mean, we don't know anything beyond what other people theorize themselves.
Us. Yeah, but it became like this thing that you don't bring up. It became like this,
probably like Pal World is now. Like do not mention Pal World. Do not make a joke about Pal World.
Don't talk about it.
Keep your mouth shut.
Go work on that Nintendo Direct and keep your mouth shut. Yeah, but even when sometimes we would be forced to bring it up, like when we were writing like big E3 Q&As.
Yeah, like they would occasionally find a reason. Like there was the famous Reggie digital event at E3 where they made a joke of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes we would have to prep for questions around
obviously
that.
They would have had to prep for questions for this.
Always very roundabout though.
Right. Very roundabout, very
nothing to announce at this time.
Nothing to announce, but there's got to be some. The theory is that around the legal issues and the licensing stuff is probably the most accurate. But the most hilarious thing is when Reggie tweeted over the weekend is like, "Don't ask me," because I think people are asking Itoi-san like, "Don't ask me, like, don't talk to me about this because this is not my problem."
Right.
And go ask Nintendo, basically. And Reggie, like, quote, retweeted that and was like, also not my problem. I was like, this is literally the time for my favorite line. Not my monkeys, not my circus. That's what this is.
To which I've been telling you, one of these days I'm going to turn that against you and say, Krysta, this is your circus. These are your monkeys. What are you doing?
The monkeys have run amok.
The monkeys have taken over the circus.
My circus is falling apart.
Right.
Oh, no. But yes, I got to laugh. Because I felt like Reggie was laughing. So I had to laugh too.
And again, we have no clue what these issues are, but I wonder, like, is there a world where you could remake this game and work around whatever the issue is?
Yeah. Maybe.
It seems like that would be a solid. I mean, I don't know what the actual market is beyond people just memeing.
Time for people
to buy this.
Time for all of you who want this to basically like reset your region to Japan.
I mean, I actually don't think the actual like how many Mother 3s would you actually sell if you did a remake?
Right.
Probably not that many.
It's like the vocal minority again.
But
also because it is such like a meme now.
Right.
It's more so a meme than it is an actual thing. And I bet you anything, once you release it, like
there'd be some letdown.
It'll be a huge letdown, and then people
like, oh, we finally got the thing, and
now
what are we gonna meme about?
What are we gonna? Yeah, it's like you can never release it because you want people to have this. Like it's like the chase. Once you get the person that you're chasing, it's like boring.
Right.
Like I actually don't want you.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah. It's like that was what I was chasing. Like ew.
Speaking of Pal World, we have another Pal World sales update. So the game has now been out for 1 month, and Pal World put out an update saying the total number of players has exceeded 25 million, which is quite a number. Way to go.
Oh, man.
15 million on Steam, 10 million on Xbox. Mm-hmm. We will continue to prioritize fixing bugs and preventing cheating.
Oh, the cheating.
That is the final part of their update.
They duping pals?
I have fallen off of Pal World because, again, we both needed to hunker down and finish Like a Dragon. I'd be very glad to revisit Pal World. Maybe if they have some new update or some new thing that they add.
We still need to play some multiplayer Pal World.
I still have a great impression of Pal World.
Yes,
and I shall be back.
I dabble still. Like every once in a while, I'll check. Like every couple of days.
Well, maybe this is why you haven't finished this game.
It's like 15 minutes. It's like looking at my Animal Crossing town.
Okay.
It's like 15 minutes. See how the pals are doing.
Right.
make sure your base is still all good.
Yeah. And the Xbox promotion of this game continues strongly.
This is cool.
It probably will not stop. They were just tweeting about you could win like a custom Series S that has this really cool print on it.
Yeah.
With all these custom controllers. They're good at whipping this stuff up.
I was going to say, like, they have that custom shop anyway, so they can whip it up real quick.
Right. So I expect that they will continue to push this game very
Xbox, send me this. I want this.
Well, it's one of a kind, I think.
Oh.
Custom, well, it actually doesn't say how many, but...
Give it to me.
Well, you can submit your name. Put your name in the hat to win
I'm
this.
18 plus. Good.
Barely.
I'm a baby.
So, way to go, Pal World.
Way to go. Yeah, way to go, Xbox, for continuing to support
Well, you
this.
gotta do that now, yeah.
I like it.
All right, so that is the news. Let's talk about some games we are playing.
Okay, you set the table.
So I finished Like a Dragon Infinite. Well,
you did.
I'm not going to say anything about it because, again, we have the spoiler cast coming in a matter of days. If you would like my thoughts on the game, you can go there. And obviously, I completed the end game, so it's all a spoiler. So I don't want to go there.
No,
you on the other hand, what do you have to say?
Well, what I have to say is this.
What do you have to say for yourself?
My monkeys have run amok. No. So the reason why I have been under the gun to get this game done.
A lot of excuses right now.
Obviously, because we got to record this tomorrow, but also because I was sick.
So?
I should have played Power World when I had 104 fever. Like a Dragon when I had 104 fever. So I was a little behind just going into this last part of the game. I was way behind you. I had an unfortunate thing happen to me where I am in the last chapter. I am in the end game. And the last chapter there's a lot to do. I had an unfortunate incident where I was woefully underleveled. And that caused some backtracking, which caused some lost hours, which caused me to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning last night and finish a significant part of that last chapter so that I can finish the rest of it tonight before we record tomorrow. So I think I'm okay, but I had to do it last night. I had to really just, there was something that happened to me that I will be sharing in the spoiler cast.
Something that happened.
Something happened to me that I will be sharing in the spoiler cast that caused some issues. But besides that, and you know what was amazing? I won't say too much more about this because I want to save it for our big spoiler cast that we're doing. But you know what's really amazing about this is if with any other game, this would have been a rage quit moment. I would have been like, I'm done. Throw the controller. I am so done. No more. I'm not going to play the rest of this game.
Yeah.
I will be watching the ending on YouTube or something. But I was like, no. I felt, even if we didn't do the spoiler cast, I was like, no, I want to play this game. This game is fun.
Okay.
I don't care. I will go back and redo this section. I don't care. And as I was trying to get to the point where I could finish the chapter, I was still having a lot of fun. I was still really enjoying it. So, yes, this game is very long and very involved. But yeah, I really was I should have been more annoyed, but I wasn't, honestly. So it was really interesting because I did not feel too bad about it. Anyhow, but I'm on track now. I think I'm okay.
Well, have fun with your all-nighter before we record tomorrow.
I had a lot of coffee this morning already, so I should be fine.
I got into a couple things that were in the Direct that were available after that.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Pepper Grinder demo.
I downloaded that too.
So this is an indie game that I think they'd shown this in an indie showcase before.
Yeah, definitely.
This is one of those games where it's yes, it was very smart of you to put out a demo because it's just got this one game mechanic that's really fun that you immediately are oh yes, now
drilling.
Now I see why I should play this and get this. So your little character has this big drill, and you can use it to attack enemies or whatever. But the real hook is you're actually drilling through these stone walls in the environment, and once you connect with one of those, you just start to move. It's as long as you're holding the drill button, you are going. And you can control where you're going, but you don't stop. So you can like basically take your hand off of this, you need to guide where it's going, but it is going at a set speed at all times.
So you're just like in the environment, like a little like tunneling around basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you can press a button when you're doing that to get a little burst of speed, but there's a lot of kind of like special platforming things that happen where it's like, oh, go through this thing and then push a button to jump from one rock structure to the next and keep going this way.
Well, that's cool.
It's very fun and very inventive. And I actually didn't finish the demo because it was like, I get what this is. Okay. I'll wait for the full game.
Okay.
But the demo does a great job of showing you what this mechanic is and how it works and why it's really fun.
Yeah, I downloaded a demo too. I'll play this after I finish it.
Yeah, really cool. Next, I played the Contra Operation Galuga.
How hard
demo.
is this game?
Well, let me tell you. So this is based on the original Contra game, which many people know from the NES. This is an NES classic.
Notoriously
difficult. Which is a very difficult game. Right. So what I learned as I started playing this, and more as I kept playing, is like, this is a very loosely interpreted reimagining of that game.
Okay.
So it kind of starts off with like the first level, you're in the jungle, you're like, yeah, this feels like that. But then it starts to go in a different direction where like the boss of that is that kind of big wall thing where you got to shoot like the gun, you got to shoot the red thing.
Okay.
And then the level ends. Well, I blew up the wall and then another wall came on the other side. It's like, we're changing things up now.
Okay, so you're like facing that away now.
They completely like change up what that boss actually is. And then in the NES version after that, you go into this kind of like behind the back in the corridor, like the style of game completely changes where you're shooting ahead, like behind your guy. And in Galuga, Galuga.
Galuga or Galuga?
No, Galuga.
Galuga.
Galuga. Maybe that's a good name for a Patreon subscriber. It's up for grabs. It goes just straight into the next level from the original Contra, which is you like climbing up this waterfall.
I see.
So they've taken a lot of liberties with changing up the structure of this game. A big change now is it's not a one-hit kill. So you can take a couple hits and you can actually equip these different kind of perks to let you do different things. So like there is one that gives you like an extra hit.
Okay.
The game is still hard.
But it's a little bit more forgiving.
Probably. I don't know later on if they tuned it to be more hard. But I imagine they're thinking like, let's make this a little bit more approachable because this game, and especially the really like modern, well, it's not, it's like a PS2 game, Contra Shattered Soldier, I think that one's called, is like super duper hard.
Okay.
So I think they're probably trying to make it a little bit more accessible.
I think so. They have to. It's like impossible.
Yeah. It's now like a pretty like chunky 3D characters. I found the visibility on some things to be a little not optimal, of like the bullets coming at you, like I found to be a little bit
hard to see,
hard to make out from the background and other things. So
well, that's important because you kind of need that to be very crystal clear.
I'm curious, like in the full game, how that plays out, because there were times like, who's shooting me? And it's like, I couldn't see where this bullet was coming from.
Oh,
that's not great. They've now also built in, like, there's kind of like a story cutscene that happens.
Really?
I was like, Contra? I wasn't expecting this from Contra, and I don't know if I entirely need it. But maybe
it's like you're not playing this game for the narrative.
Maybe it's cool. So I don't know. I kind of came away from this with some mixed feelings of like, well, I definitely like original Contra, and I'm open to them embellishing on that, but have they embellished it in all the right ways?
Yeah, does it feel out of place?
I didn't have a definitive yes to that question.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that you're describing just feels like out of place for a Contra game.
Right. So that game's coming out pretty soon, so I guess we'll find out. I was not 100% sold on this. Based on the demo, though.
Pocky Jockey?
Lastly, yes.
You finally got Pocky Jockey?
I did get back into Pocky Jockey, thank goodness. This was... this and Suika Game were our pop-off moments from the Direct.
I did buy Suika Game.
Good for you. You're now
very excited.
$2 poor.
I have.
Great.
I have been playing the Switch version of. I'm no longer playing my like janky web version of the Switch game. So
good. Don't. So you had been playing the Apple Arcade version of this over the past year.
Yes.
I had not really touched Pocky Jockey
since the
3DS, which had been a long time.
Oh my gosh, Pocky Jockey.
I really needed to relearn how to play this game because it is a lot more complicated in spots than I was like, wait, the what?
Yeah.
The comfort zone and my enthusiasm and my
your stamina.
Right. And then the whole thing of like placing yourself on the track. I was like, wait, what do I have to do again?
And then like even like not running into the other horses.
Right.
When you're
Right. The game
is much more than solitaire.
The game has a pretty in-depth tutorial, but even then, like you do need to like do a couple races on your own to totally get the hang of it.
Yes.
But like I think that's why this is like, this was such like in the Nintendo office, this was such like a favorite game because it's like it's truly like a gamer's game where it's like we're combining these two forms of like competitive gameplay and we're really mashing them up in some unexpected ways, but we're not compromising any of the details of those two. And
deeply strategic.
Right. There's just like a lot of layers to playing this game to doing it well, which would kind of belie the very like cutesy exterior of the game.
It is such like a technically like perfectly balanced game.
It is.
And you haven't even talked about the cute little breeding. Which is
I don't really do a lot of that.
I do a lot of
honestly.
breeding.
Okay.
I have so many like custom horses now that are all like the special horses that you get. So like the cool looking ones with like you can breed them so that they have like very specific characteristics based on how you like to play. So yeah, the depth in this game is really like something that I think a lot of people will be surprised by if they have never tried this game before. Like on the surface, it looks like souped up solitaire, but you dig just a little deeper and it's just like there's so much more to it. And they've added a fair amount too. So they added this like online multiplayer stuff. That. They've also added like a couple of different ways for you to train to become better. Oh. At least in the Apple Arcade version, they have it.
Okay.
Where it just teaches you like how to be better at this. Because sometimes you're like, I don't understand how I can get a perfect score.
Yeah.
Like I always have cards left over, but like there's like such a deep strategy to how to do it. But yeah, anyways, I play this game like every day, pretty much. Like at least one game a day.
It's really good. It's still super addictive. I really like the look of it now that it's in HD. They've done some like there's a number of times where the backgrounds I think are just photographs that they have put slightly out of focus.
Yeah.
Which seems like maybe a weird approach, but totally works with the look of this game. I just think it looks really nice. The writing is like super funny and really well done. There is like a light story, but it's kind of more about just like the characters interacting and the banter between it all. So yeah, like this gets our highest endorsement. And
the horses are so cute.
It's true.
What did you name your horse?
I just went with the name it gave me.
Oh, I always name it something chilly.
Because, real horse races have weird names.
Like like they like she's in first.
Sure.
Always comes in second.
Yeah.
Like they have those funny names.
Right.
Like Chili runs fast. Is a horse name.
So I've been juggling a lot of things. I've been enjoying this week between finishing Like a Dragon and starting Final Fantasy. I did start the Final Fantasy demo.
Demo's good.
I don't really have. I started like 30 minutes and then I got tired and went to bed.
Oh, okay.
So I don't really have anything to say. We'll do next week a huge impressions of Final Fantasy. But it's been nice. I think tonight I'm going to go back to Helldivers since it seems like maybe they fixed the servers, I think. Issues. Yeah. So I'm excited to get back to that. But yeah, I'm just going to dabble a little bit this week before Final Fantasy comes out. You, on the other hand, not so lucky.
Oh, that's fine.
No.
Still enjoying this game, so.
So that's the games that we are playing. And we're about to get into our questions. But again, we get every question from our Patreon community. Great time to say if you're interested in joining, you can do that at patreon.com/Kit and Krysta. And again, get that great spoiler cast.
Oh, yeah.
Doing those once a month, the big game of the month. We will reveal what our next spoiler cast will be.
At the beginning of next month.
This one?
Yes.
At the end of this one, we're actually going to review. We're going to give we don't review games, but we will review Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth.
We've played enough hours, that's for sure.
There's a number of people in our community who are saying, like, I haven't played this game, but I want to listen to this to just see what you have to say about that.
I mean...
Which sometimes I will do that with podcasts I like.
Do that too.
I was like, I just want to hear what these people have to say about this thing.
Sometimes it gets me interested, and sometimes I'm like, no, it's not for me.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally.
So you can go either way, but I love it.
Right. If now is not the time for you to become a subscriber, we will have it available in our Patreon shop.
So you can get it as a one-off.
As just a one-off thing. So give it a look. We're really excited about this. I'm excited to do that tomorrow. All right.
Yes.
Into the questions. First is from Cesar. Hello, Kit and Krysta. I wanted to ask y'all about the new Nintendo Direct intro and even the new template for the slides before it goes to a trailer. Krysta pointed it out in the video, but only for a bit. Is this a signifier of a new console on the way? Y'all have a lot more intel on how the marketing team is right now. I remember as a kid, whenever Cartoon Network would change some of their commercials aesthetic, it would be a new era. So it immediately came to mind when I noticed the intro was updated.
I did notice the intro was updated too, and then I second guessed myself, and I was like, no, they didn't update it.
I think there were a number of people pointing this out.
Yeah, when we were doing our reactions, I immediately noticed it, and then I totally second guessed myself. But yeah, it looks like it has been updated.
I will be quick to say, please do not read too much into this. If they wanted to overhaul Nintendo Direct for a big new system or something like that, they don't need to do that in the partner showcase. They can actually do it in the new thing. Right. And you would be surprised at some of the reasons why it got updated in the past. Could be extremely mundane and boring.
It's really boring.
And not as exciting as you may think it to be.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, new year, time to refresh the
we got
logo.
a little extra budget. Let's do something.
Sometimes it's like, oh, we have a little bit of money left over.
Exactly.
If you don't spend it,
you don't
get it again next year. So you gotta spend it.
Use it or lose it is really good life advice.
It really is.
I've come to realize.
Yeah, I agree.
It really is.
That's right.
So whether it's a Nintendo Direct or your own life, use it or lose it, people.
Or lose it.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. True. But yes, please. There's people tweeting me about this too. Like, I have said this. Do not...
Yeah, they don't need to workshop.
None of the stuff that feel like, people say, oh, they took that commercial down for the old Switch. It means a new Switch is coming. Oh, they updated the logo for the Direct. That means a new era. They don't think like that at all.
Yeah.
This is so boring. The reasons for this is extremely mundane, and it has nothing.
And obviously a new console is on the way. But again, they don't need to workshop it. Like, this is not our new Broadway play. We don't need to workshop it in some little nightclub.
We don't need to marquee this. Yeah.
I'm not Dave Chappelle testing some new material in a 10-person club. No, you just do it. You just do it when it's ready.
Do it, yeah.
Maverick Nate asks, hi there. Now that we are entering the back half of February, I was wondering how much consideration Nintendo would give to the timing of their Nintendo Directs when it begins to encroach on another announcement within their family of companies, like the Pokemon Day announcements on the 27th. Would they double up on announcements so close together, or are some of the surrounding days considered off limits? Thanks. I'm here to say there's been some sloppiness of late that I want to point out. Did you know that Partner Direct happened the same day as the Splatoon Side Order DLC came out?
Yeah.
That is sloppy.
I saw that and no one realized that DLC was out.
First of all, it seems like a lot of people just didn't know that DLC was coming out that day because that was a random Twitter drop they'd done weeks before.
Right.
But why would you do a Direct and have all these other drops come out? Like, people play Pocky Jockey, play these demos. Mm-hmm. Why compete with your own big first-party DLC? That's a little sloppy. I don't get it.
Yeah.
As far as them and Pokemon, though, like, Pokemon doesn't get plugged into Directs unless they need to know.
Yeah.
Like, it's truly, are you on a need-to-know basis? And even close partners sometimes don't need to know.
But on the other hand, Nintendo does know, now that we were just talking about how Pokemon does their showcase on Pokemon Day.
Right, they know that's happening.
So they will avoid that day. Like, they will actively not do it on that day.
Because they have to promote that stuff too.
They have to promote it too, exactly.
Right.
This one did, to your point of it being like a little bit odd in terms of the schedule and being sloppy. I do think that they were like under some sort of like weird situation where they were waiting for that Xbox business update, and they had a very limited number of days to work around.
Yes, that Pentiment sizzle reel. We must rearrange everything for the Pentiment sizzle reel.
They might as well have put that out on a Thursday so that they wouldn't cannibalize the Splatoon stuff on that Wednesday. Whatever, too late now.
But sometimes there's also a lot of like behind the scenes reasons that are not really like people don't really need to know about or need to know the details, but they make a difference. It's like we can't do this because
of something.
Of some non-consumer facing reason. It is what it is.
The partner showcases are also harder because you have a lot of partners involved. So there is a lot of like, work with them on their dates and stuff like that. But
the last month of Nintendo announcements have not been the cleanest, I will say.
It's been very odd.
A little jumbled.
Yeah, we talked about that. Like the whole that whole month of February just has been a little bit of a mess.
Yeah.
And I do wonder what is happening, like who is making these decisions and looking at the taking a bird's eye view at this announcement calendar because it's not great.
Yeah. D. Phillips asks, hi Kit and Krysta, when learning about upcoming games for the first time, was there any fanfare involved? Or would an internet-breaking announcement like Smash Ultimate just get casually mentioned in a Monday morning meeting? Did any of these announcements stand out as being particularly exciting, or was it all just more work?
Definitely when we learned about games that we were excited about, we got excited, for sure. Like we were really always excited when like a game that we were anticipating was like going to come out soon or like we're going to start working on it. We usually learned about the games kind of in like bulk. Like we usually get like a dump around like this is the roadmap for the next amount of time or whatever.
Yeah, it was that, or it'd be like get pulled into your boss's office like, did you know this game's coming? Let me get you ready for this thing.
Right, and then there were all code names too. So then like you would have to figure out, they had this very complicated disclosure system where they would like, once you were approved to be like to know what that game was because you might be working on it or doing something on it or whatever, then you would know like what that code name stood for. But you would see all these code names like all over these documents and stuff. And then sometimes you could like backwards engineer like, oh, that code name is obviously this game, like duh.
You were not, when you learned about these games, the intention was not to get you excited. It was to give you the information you need to know to do. So it's a little bit different than learning about a game where it's like perfectly positioned, all the wording is perfect. It's like more functional.
Very functional.
It's like, this is the 3 bullet points we can tell you right now about this thing, and or maybe later on you'll see it. Yeah. You'll see it in like
a demo or
in like a semi-functional state.
Very bare bones.
It's very different.
Yeah. Usually when we would see it, it was over like a really janky
or a bad video conference.
So everything's like lagging, and you're like, I kind of know maybe what I'm looking at, but also I kind of don't. But yeah, it was definitely very functional, very much like your brain is not thinking like, I'm so excited to play the next Smash. It's more so like, okay, I better get going on like developing this marketing plan. So, but I mean, it definitely is exciting when you saw games on that list that you're excited about. Like whenever a new Fire Emblem game got announced or got like revealed, or like, wow, that's so cool. Like, oh, I wonder who's gonna work on that. Or you like might raise your hand and be like, can I work on that game? Because I'm excited. I like really like this game. So would it be okay if I worked on it? So sometimes you get to choose too.
Yeah.
Which is always fun. Or like sometimes like your boss will tell you like, oh, I'm really excited to tell you that you're gonna lead this game that we know that you love. Like, yay. And you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. And you like, I feel good about that. Like I like that, you know? So yeah. So that's it. It is a bit exciting.
Cerulean Dragon has the next question. Hey, you two. With the next part of Final Fantasy VII Remake about to launch, I have to ask, how much do you think Sony is paying to keep these games exclusive, or do you think it's Square Enix's decision? When people talk about Final Fantasy, people seem to think it's a given that these games are exclusive to PS5. Do people not realize that mainline Final Fantasies have mostly been multi-platform since 2008's Final Fantasy 13? One sold less than the Series XS, and yet got Final Fantasy 15 and re-releases of 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12, all of which were on Game Pass at one point. It's frustrating as a gamer to see a franchise that was multi-platform for over a decade get locked down to exclusivity with no sign of escape. Finally, do you think this might change in the future, given how Square Enix seemed disappointed, as usual, in Final Fantasy XVI's sales numbers? So what is it? Do you think it's them backing up the Brinks truck, or is this some big strategic plan by Square Enix?
I think they're backing up the Brinks truck.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I do think Square Enix has talked themselves into this being the best decision.
I think so too.
As well.
Yeah.
And especially with some of these Japanese companies, these long-time arrangements are hard to untangle. Where it's starting with the PS1, and this was like a huge betrayal of Nintendo when they switched over to PlayStation.
Thanks.
Like, I do think that relationship still holds weight, even if times have changed. It's harder to get them to move off of that. I remember when I worked on Metal Gear Solid 4 and we got asked endlessly, is this coming to Xbox 360? Like, Kojima was extremely clear of like, no, it's not. But nobody believed him because it didn't make sense. Like, you really should. This game looks like it costs a lot of money. Why wouldn't you do that? But he was like, we have this deal. So I do think there's some like really ironclad agreements that hold through
backdoor handshake
over time for whatever reason. But yeah, hopefully the Brinks truck is full of money, and it's like $100 bills and not $5 bills.
I think it is.
Because they are giving up a lot of opportunities to not be on these other platforms, especially PC. Like also like PC these days is like, for there used to be like, oh, console games, nobody on a PC wants that. Now it's like the line is very blurred.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I don't believe a PC version of that's been announced. I wonder if that would be the next thing where they're like, yeah, okay. Even we at PlayStation put our games on PC, and that's not as big a deal.
That's not as big of a leap.
Right.
I do think there is also some unquantifiable feeling that games that are exclusive to PS5 has like a prestige to it. There is this like idea that I think people, even us, especially I think me, have like this, just I don't know why I think like this, but I just think like, oh, it's like the HBO of of video games, where you're not going to PlayStation, PS5 to like watch 90 Day Fiancé. You're going there to watch like Game of Thrones. You're gonna, it's okay, like Game Pass, you can dabble, you can have like more like, like not a prestige game, but there's this idea that like these really expensive AAA prestige titles are PS5 exclusives. And I don't know if there's no facts to back that up, but it's just like the way people think. And I kind of feel like Square Enix also thinks that too. So there could be like a part of that. It's like this game is so big and impressive that like it has to be a PS5 exclusive, They
did have that whole to-do with Phil Spencer saying, we've got this new deal with Square Enix to bring more games over, which hasn't totally amounted to a lot so far.
Yeah.
Are they going to be disappointed again in this game? I mean, this game seems like it's set to be a huge seller, but they seem to be perpetually disappointed as well.
Because they're so expensive.
Maybe one way to be less disappointed is to put it on more systems.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this feels like, again, one of those things where something has to give as the industry changes and evolves. You can't do it the old way forever.
Right. Yeah, you have to let go of that thought, that kind of thinking about it being, it only makes it's only significant if it's on if it's an exclusive. Like, I think that is something that maybe just can't be sustainable for very much longer. So maybe we all need to change our thinking around that.
Yeah. So. VGM Life asks, hi Kit and Krysta, I recently crossed Silent Hill 3 off my backlog, and between that and listening to Kit talk about Metal Gear Solid, I've been reminiscing about Konami being a premier developer. Kit, what was it like working at Konami? Did it feel like a company in decline, or was that only after you left? And for both of you at Nintendo, was there ever talk about Konami losing their way? Thanks. So I left in, was it 2007 or 8? It was one of those. And it felt like I left like right before things started to really turn in another direction, because at that point, Metal Gear Solid 4 was still coming, and that's when the Kojima Konami relationship was still okay. Obviously, they did Metal Gear Solid 5 after that, and that was a great game, but that always felt like it was done kind of under duress, like as that relationship was falling apart. And I remember them kind of like having some weird quotes of like, you know, him feeling constrained about what Konami was doing, and it just felt like, wow, this is definitely the last one of these. Yeah. Something bad's happening.
The beginning of the end,
right?
Kind of thing.
And at that point, we were still making those great Castlevania DS games. And
that's right.
I mean, Konami was still making all of its big franchises with really good quality and was still taking swings at some new stuff that, you know, felt very much, you know, like a big developer like Konami would do. But after that, you started to hear about, you know, developers leaving or teams getting disbanded or like really big developers like getting reassigned to pachinko. And it's like, what is happening here? And they would still have a big game here and there, but like even just the volume of the releases just started to completely stop. So I'm glad to say like I didn't have to deal with any of that. It definitely felt like a very legit company, and one like again like in doing our job of PR, like people were excited to cover these games and excited about what Konami was doing, which is not really the case now, unfortunately.
So you didn't see like writing on the wall while you were there?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. Yeah. I mean, it felt like it was still in the good times, and this was when the Silent Hill movie was getting going. So it's like, oh, we're getting into movies. This is exciting. We're moving into these new places. And yeah, again, all the big name developers were still there doing their thing. So it felt like, yeah, we can keep doing this. But obviously the company felt otherwise, and like you could say they were a decade or 15 years early on this whole trend now of like it's not worth our money to invest in these games, which is reinvested in pachinko, reinvested in gambling,
the
gyms, vitamins, health clubs.
They like definitely like
there is that big building when you go to Las Vegas Airport, big Konami building right there, because they're making slot machines and other kind of like gaming. Gambling machines,
probably really
which is
lucrative.
very very lucrative. They're a very diversified company. So I think a week ago somebody put out a list of like the most valuable gaming companies in Japan, like Konami was still pretty high on the list, and people are like, well, how are they bigger than Square Enix or Capcom? How is that possible?
This is not just video.
This is not just gaming. This is all the other stuff that they are in,
so interesting.
Which is extremely random in a lot of ways, but it's
so interesting.
Doing fine for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting business model for them. There were several ex-Konami-ers at Nintendo, including our boss, and also some other people on our sales team. Yeah. So there was, the industry again is so small that you get people doing the rounds. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So while there was never like any bad talk or any no one was like talking smack about Konami or anything at Nintendo, we did have a fair amount of like ex-Konamiers that sometimes you'll get like a little comparison, like, oh, when we were at Konami, this thing happened or whatever. But yeah, nobody was like disparaging about it at Nintendo. Yeah.
Last question is from the T-Man. Hi, Kit and Krysta. In honor of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate being officially finished with the Sora Amiibo update, do you think he will continue developing games? And what was your favorite memory of Daddy Sakurai?
Oh.
I will give a tease to the last, because that might be a story we do in the future. I did get to play Smash Brothers with Mr. Sakurai, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Look forward to the story someday.
I have a lot of really random memories with Mr. Sakurai, because I worked on Smash Ultimate. And some of them are just like fascinating to me, and we'll probably save it for a big Ultimate story time as well. Gotta bring like Yofine and Monica back for that, because they worked on that game with me.
You need to do that.
Monica and I went to Budapest to shoot the commercial together, so we gotta do that in a big like cool roundtable Smash Ultimate Nintendo story time, where we can share lots of memories about Daddy Sakurai. But yeah, there's like a lot of stuff with him that's very unexpected. Like I just didn't know what to expect when I worked with him. He's like really such a myth and legend, So it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, like I didn't think that he would do that. That's so weird. Like it's so weird to see him in this way, So I have a lot of those kinds of stories that we'll definitely share. But what an end of it! I think when I saw that last Amiibo came out, I actually had like a weird emotional response to it. I was like, wow, this really is like the end of an era. Like, this was a significant thing that happened in my life that like changed me as a person, and like now it's over. It's like, oh, it feels weird. You know, it feels like, what's next? So interesting. Yeah.
But yes, he's definitely going to be making games.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
you think so?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I think it's in his blood.
No question.
He can't stop.
Thanks to everybody who submitted a question. Those were some great ones.
Yeah.
Now it's time to do some Patreon shout-outs.
Yay! Our final boss, Aaron Hash.
Aaron Hash, enjoyed the
Still
great picture.
The final boss.
Fantastic stuff.
Yes, he's the best. Very good boss all around. So thank you, Aaron. And now for our superstars. Here we go. Ben Eichhorn.
Maru Mayhem.
Eigenverse.
Kiss My Flapjack.
Mike Chin.
Roy Eschke.
Switching it up _
Safazon.
VGM Life.
Link the Hero of Winds.
Angela Bycroft and her pig Molly.
Thomas O'Rourke.
Kyle LaBeouf.
Roberto Nieves.
Frederick Wolf Conradson.
Andrew Uhas.
Chili.
Bruce Dash.
And Simon. We just did our One Up Club meetup.
Yeah. So
Last
F099.
We did F099, and Angela Bycroft was one of my rivals, which makes Molly my rival too, which was terrifying for me.
It's not going to go well for you.
I lost.
That's all I'm going to say.
I lost badly.
I'm not surprised.
It was bad. All right. One Up Club, graduation service. Here we go. Aaron Burgundy.
Ale Alejandro.
Astro Dev.
Awesome 46.
Bad Moon Horizon.
Benji B.
Bookem Dano.
Bookishly Fab.
Brad SF56.
Brooke Obscura.
Brovac Novak.
Cameron.
Shadir.
Chelly Squirrel.
Chris Cube.
Chrissy.
Christopher Lay.
Captain Alex.
Crimcat.
Cristobal.
C. Roper 17.
Cynical Squid.
Daniel Phillips.
Dachshund.
Dark Chaos.
Doiko.
Elite Peach.
Espars 50.
Farpree 69.
Fairbound.
Fernie and Jess Forever.
Fox Deploy.
Garrett Hallfish.
Garth the Wolf.
Gartooth.
Heroic.
Iris Marin.
Jay Rando.
Jabroni Jones.
Jeffrey Hernandez.
Jeremy Lewis.
Jerry 92602.
Jesse Hernandez.
John Responte.
Jonathan Rowe.
Jordan Collette.
Jordan Hemmerly.
Joshua Clements.
Juji Fruit.
Justin Lemminger.
Colwood 2796.
Keith Kwan.
Kevin Delane.
Kilo Kiba.
Christopia Party With Me.
Kyle Gamer Barry Rookie.
Kyle Kretzer.
Linnell Stickman.
Lazy Cat for Coffee.
Lex.
Lit.
M1 IMAT.
Macho Potato.
Mad Dog 5981.
Magnificent Easy G plus Callie Marie.
Marky Man 64.
Mario Man 392.
Mecha Dragon 101.
Medallion.
Megan.
Michael Cravens.
Mikey.
Mr. Ryan 07.
Motomania.
Mr. Andy Pong.
Mr. Beans and Dip.
MSN Poke Gamer.
My Tram.
Nasir.
Nathan Burkhart.
Nick.
Ninja 11.
Panda Buns.
Pangy.
Paul C. Pace.
Paul Gale Network.
Prime Factor.
Prince Charmless.
Raver.
Rain Tag.
Record Rumble.
Rob Osborne.
Rocks.
Rianetta.
Sakura Sky.
Sharif Jackson.
Shinryu.
Schmiggles.
Slowbro.
Snazzle.
Spicy Munchkin.
Steel Citron.
Stevie Meeks.
Tales of Link.
Tay 120 and 64.
The Shark Among Men.
Thomas Alvarez.
Three Rivers.
Timmy V.
Topher Schmofer.
Totally Joed.
Travis Torline.
Trajowie.
Tugs Puppy Bear.
Tusku.
Tyler Geis.
Vezves.
Video Game Stupid.
Vig Mictor.
Viridian.
VirtualBot.
Weep Kingdom.
WG Grizzy.
What up, Khalil?
YU.
Wicked Davy.
Will Johnson.
Zudaverth.
Zada Essen.
Zelgroth.
Zapatty.
And Zroid.
You've escaped YU for another week.
Shout out to Elite Peach, who legitimately came in first place
Oh my gosh.
in F099.
In F099.
I was impressed.
Elite Peach is elite.
It's true.
It's
No matter the game.
No matter the game.
Elite
It's like
Peach or
number
Jay
one.
Rando are coming out on top.
It's amazing.
It's a combination
They're
of
so
them.
talented. Wow. I was putting my money on them for any sort of game tournament. All right. If you'd like to join us to get access to our very exciting Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth spoiler cast, and we are at patreon.com/Kit and Krysta. You also get tons of other stuff, even more exclusive content like our bonus Q&As behind the scenes, and lots more cool stuff. But yeah, thank you for making all of this possible. Our Patreon families is what keeps us going.
That's
so
right.
Thank you so much.
And while you're here, if you're watching on video, you can go ahead and subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and also leave us a comment. And if you're listening on audio, you can also subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and a written review, if you please.
And we're on the socials. We are on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and Threads. All right, that's it. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.